Hello everyone. How are you all? How are you all? All good? I'm hoping all of you all had a great stint. You all looked at the question papers which were asked in UPSC this year. This discussion will be on what was asked in General Studies Paper 3 in the UPSC Mains Examination 2026. My name is Ranjan Kaul and I will be taking the session on Indian economy. Now, first, let's look at the weightage which was assigned to this year and was there any pattern change or not. Now, ordinarily, from the section Economy, Development and Agriculture, we normally expect questions to be in the range of 8 odd questions. Typically, you will find that 8 questions are asked, and in the classes also we discuss quite a lot of times that 4 of these questions will be related to agriculture, food security, food processing industry and land reforms, and the remaining 4 questions will be coming from other aspects of the GS3 syllabus. Now this year, surprisingly, against 7 questions which were asked in 2025, this year UPSC may be more than made up for a lack of 1 question the last year, and this year we asked 9 questions. Now let us go one by one across each of these questions. The first one that we'll be starting with will be question number 1, which is around central bank digital currency. Now, was this an unexpected question? Absolutely not. Ever since RBI began the pilot of central bank digital currency, questions have been asked in prelims. Previously, a question has been asked in 2023. In 2026 itself, there was a question which was asked around central bank digital currency, and we found that this year prelims asked it and this year's mains also asked it. Let's look at the question. The question says, what do you mean by digital rupee? In this context, explain the working and progress of India's CBDC, central bank digital currency. Now, it's a very, very straightforward question, not a very analytical question at all. In the sense, what do you have to do? For every answer, you have to have an introduction, you have to have a body, and then you have to have a conclusion. Because this is a 10 marker, you do not have a lot of space and you do not have the luxury of a lot of words for you to be answering this question. Which is why every answer that I have shared with you guys, you will find that there will be a very brief introduction, there will be a decently lengthy body aspect of the answer, and then there will be a short conclusion to wrap up the answer. Now, the question has 2 parts. The first one says, what do you mean by digital rupee? And second, he's asking you explain the working of this digital rupee as well as the progress of what is happening in India with respect to central bank digital currency. The introduction has to be really, really crisp. Why? Because you do not have the luxury of time. You have to complete the answers to 20 questions, which requires you to have such muscle memory that you will be writing very short, very brief and very relevant answers. Now, introduction, what really is digital rupee? Digital rupee is nothing. It is just the digital version of our currency. For example, if you hold a currency note, a paper note, it's a tangible asset because it's physical in form. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can store it somewhere too. But what is digital currency? Digital currency is nothing. Digital currency is just the digital version of the same. For example, this is a real book. If I share a PDF of this book with you, then that will be a digital version of the same book. Same happens in case of currency. Now, what is digital rupee? Like we said, digital rupee issued by who? Issued by the RBI, written as e-rupee, is the digital version of the regular rupee notes. It is nothing, it is just cash, but digital. Very short, very sweet introduction, 2 lines, and we are done with. The next question, the next part is extremely important, which is, in this context, explain the working and progress of India's central bank digital currency. Now, if you have been following current affairs, this is a really, really easy question for you to answer. How does digital rupee function? First up, RBI is conducting pilots. There are 2 pilots happening here. There is a retail version of digital rupee and then there is a wholesale version of digital rupee. Both of these are happening across pilots. Now, The RBI has picked certain pilot banks. That means every bank is not allowed to do this. Some banks have been picked up. These banks, what they do is that they offer e-rupee wallets. Just like you have a physical wallet, these banks will offer you a digital wallet. Now, what you can do is that you can create an account with these banks and you can download the wallet app. What are these e-wallets tied to? These e-wallets are tied to your existing savings account at the same bank. Which means what you can do is that you can simply transfer your money from your account to this e-rupee wallet, and RBI is going to convert your electronic rupee into digital currency. That's how it happens. That's how simple it is. Customers can transfer money from their existing bank accounts into their e-wallets, and this can be done 24/7. You can do it at any time of the day or the night. Apart from this, how do you use this? You can, of course, transfer this e-rupee just like you can transfer notes to somebody. You can similarly transfer central bank's digital currency also. You can use this e-rupee as well to buy goods and services from merchants, which means that you can scan an ordinary QR code, which is your UPI QR code, or you can have a specialized QR code for transferring this money to the merchant who you are buying goods and services from. This is how it basically functions. Here, it is important for you to definitely mention a very, very important feature of this currency, which is programmability. Other currency is not programmable, but central bank's digital currency is programmable, which means that its use can be purpose bound, which means you can create rules as to when this money should be spent, where this money should be spent, or even you can pick up certain merchants wherein this money can be used and the money will use itself. This is a very, very special feature. In your answers, this feature has to be highlighted. It is very simple. Again, how does it work? RBI has selected a few banks. If you have an account with these banks, you can download the e-rupee wallet app from these banks. Then what you can do is simply transfer your account balance, however much you want digital currency for, transfer it to your e-rupee wallet, and then you can use this e-rupee wallet. How can you use this? You can send this digital currency to another person who has an e-rupee wallet, or you can also scan QR codes and pay merchants for the goods and services that you're using. One important point to be highlighted here is the programmability of central bank digital currency, which means that the use of this currency has to be purpose bound, or it can be purpose bound. Please note that all of these points here, which I've written, these points have to be really, really succinct. You don't have to expand so much. You don't have to explain a lot because it's just a 10 marker. Once you have explained the working of digital currency, thereafter, you have to discuss what has been the progress with respect to India's central bank digital currency. From the time the pilot began, which was in the month of November 2022, what is the current status? Where are we in respect of central bank digital currency? This would be another part of your answer. The pilot launch happened in the year November of 2022. First, RBI created a pilot for the wholesale version, and then soon after, in December 2022, RBI also launched the pilot for the retail version of e-rupees. Now, RBI has been introducing, or it is trying to introduce, offline payments as well, which means there will be certain regions where there will be issues with respect to internet and connectivity. RBI at this moment in time is also exploring options wherein you do not require any internet services for you to be able to use your central bank digital currency. You should definitely highlight how much e-rupee is in circulation at this point in time. As per RBI's own annual report for the financial year 2025-26, e-rupee in circulation in India is roughly around 771 crore rupees. If you bring out these data points in your answers, this is going to turn an average answer into an excellent answer. That's all you have to talk about, which is that it was a pilot which was launched in the year 2022. And since then, as of now, 771 crore rupees are being in circulation in the form of e-rupee. RBI at this point in time is also exploring other payment facilities, in the sense offline payments, if that can happen. Towards the conclusion, you have to write a really short, really sweet conclusion as to what the RBI and the government are doing in this case. You can say that the RBI and government are exploring different use cases. For example, cross-border CBDC payments and wider applications to improve payment efficiency and transparency. A generic conclusion, a one-line conclusion to this answer would be good enough. Very, very straightforward question. Not a lot of analysis to be required here. It's basically a question around the status, what it means, how it works, and what is the status as of now. Absolutely no analysis required here, and very predictable question also. Although I was also very surprised that they asked this question in this year's prelims and then they asked the same question in this year's mains as well. In fact, this has happened for 2 questions, including the next question. Yeah, so we are done with this. If you can see in our Prahar booklets also, you will find in Indian economy, page number 47, we have a detailed description of how the CBDC in India works. So very, very predictable question on those lines and not very, very analytical. The next question is question number 2. Again, question number 2 is surprising because this year itself, in this year's prelims itself, they had asked a question with respect to what do we mean by financial inclusion index, or what are the parameters of financial inclusion index, RBI's financial inclusion index. And then they have asked the same question in this year's mains too, although there is some bit of variation here. The question says, examine the view that financial inclusion is an integral part of social and economic inclusion in a country such as India. Also throw light on the usefulness of RBI's Financial Inclusion Index. Now, there are multiple ways of starting this question or introducing this question. I chose a slightly different way because in our classes also, when we discuss poverty, unemployment, inequality, and development, we do discuss about something called the social exclusion approach. So what I've done here is I have indirectly used the social exclusion approach to begin this answer. The introduction here is the social exclusion approach points at exclusion, and exclusion means what? The systematic process by which people are excluded from fully participating in the social, economic, and cultural life, in fact also political life of a society. The social exclusion approach points out that exclusion is the main cause of poverty and underdevelopment in any economy, and therefore inclusion is the solution. This is my sweet introduction, a very short introduction to a question like this, because I have to eventually connect financial inclusion with social and economic inclusion. So once I do this, then I will start to answer what has exactly been asked. Like any good movie, it has to begin with a great introduction. So here is a one-line introduction for you guys that you can use. Now we'll focus on the body aspect, which is answering the demand of the question. Question says, how is financial inclusion an integral part of social and economic inclusion? Now, this cannot be done if you are not using examples. Just in case if you are thinking that I'm going to write only theory, right, most likely you're going to get less than average marks. So you have to build arguments on the basis of real use cases, real examples. And what you can do is you can either split it into 2. You can tell how financial inclusion is a part of social inclusion and how financial inclusion is a part of economic inclusion as well. Or you can combine the 2 and write a unified body part. Because this is a 10 marker, there's not a lot of space and there's not the luxury of time. So what I've done here is I've combined the 2, right? How does financial inclusion promote economic inclusion? Some good points you will have to mention here. The first point that I have mentioned here is savings. Access to banking enables individuals to invest their savings in the financial markets, generate income, improve their livelihoods, and enable structured capital formation in the economy. Now, what we all study in the circular flow of income is that for any economy to grow, savings have to be converted into investment. Now, think about use cases where people do not have access to formal financial services. Where are they going to invest or put their savings in? This is exactly what has been mentioned here, that if we give access to formal financial services to individuals, what they can do is that they can invest their savings in the markets, in the financial markets. They can put their money in banks, they can put their money in capital markets, they can put their money in equity, they can put their money in debt. And thereafter, this money will then be circulated in the economy and their savings can get converted into investments. In that process, the people who are the savers, they will also be able to generate income either in the form of interest or in the form of coupon payments or in the form of appreciation of the shares that they have bought. Without this, any economy is going to struggle towards structured capital formation, or what we call investments. So this is a very basic point, that if we do not give our people formal financial access, which is to say access to formal financial facilities, their savings are not going to be converted into investments. Economy is going to struggle, growth is going to struggle. Then if we want to make everybody a part of the economic journey of this country, we have to give them access to financial services. The second point that I mentioned here is with respect to exploitation, right? I have flipped the argument here, which means that I have discussed what if people do not get access to formal financial services. In the absence of access to formal financial services, individuals are swept into exploitative informal mechanisms such as money lenders. And here you can use examples more specifically in terms of rural credit also. You can say that 76% of rural credit is formal institutional credit, but 24% of rural credit is still informal, in the sense that people go to these informal mechanisms, money lenders, local zamindars, and they take money from them at usurious rates of interest, and this is exploitative. So if you want that your janta, your population should not be financially exploited, we have to give them access to formal financial services. I've also given an example here. Under Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, over 58 crore accounts have been created. Basic deposit accounts were opened as early as 2026. You have to mention certain data points, you have to give some examples. This is going to make your arguments very, very credible. In our classes on agriculture, we have discussed rural credit and how the absence of formal rural credit is going to lead farmers towards economic exploitation. Third one is micro entrepreneurship. What do we mean by micro entrepreneurship? Imagine that you do not have any account. Imagine that you do not have any formal financial presence. Why would any investor, why would any bank invest money in you or give you any lending? So you can flip the argument here and you can say how formal financial access creates conditions for micro entrepreneurship. There is a lot of energy in this country. There's a lot of people with great ideas and their ideas have to be financed. This cannot happen in the absence of formal financial services, is exactly the point that we have mentioned here. Access to formal credit is vital for grassroots economic growth. Through the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, over 57.26 crore collateral-free institutional loans have been sanctioned to micro and small businesses, which means that if you want to foster growth and development in this country, you will have to tap the animal spirit of the people who have business ideas and they want to create businesses and they want or they need access to formal finance. In the absence of access to formal finance, this is not going to happen in this country. Next is macroeconomic consumption. Again, a very basic point that we can use here. There are two models of growth. One is the investment-led model of growth. The other one is the consumption-led model of growth. You have to remember that 65% of this country's population lives in rural areas. And because most of them, for them, agriculture is their mainstay economic occupation with not a lot of considerable incomes. Therefore, if you want to fuel consumption, you will also have to fuel credit growth, especially in rural areas. This is what we have written. Expanding financial access, especially credit, helps fuel consumption, making the formerly unbanked a part of India's broader economic trajectory. This is where we have used the argument of consumption-led growth. If people stop consuming things, producers will stop making things and growth is going to stall. Then we have targeted welfare delivery mechanisms. The JAM Trinity has revolutionized welfare distribution by enabling DBTs, direct benefit transfers, which plugged multiple leakages and ensured that vital and immediate financial security to vulnerable sections of the society was given, especially during the times of crisis. For example, your COVID crisis. Now, what we can do here is we can also mention a few more points. I have given a lot of points here. You don't have to write all of these points in such detail. What you can do is you can also create diagrams like these. I've also discussed how formal financial access is the backbone of social inclusion. For example, we have introduced a point with respect to women's financial independence. Of all the PMJDY accounts, around 56% of operational accounts which are still active, they belong to who? They belong to women. Now, women are doing what? They are using these accounts to promote self-reliance right? Especially amongst the economically weaker women in this country. We can use multiple examples to highlight how financial inclusion fosters economic growth, fosters social inclusion as well. Now, there is one more part of this question. What you can do here is there are multiple points here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we have 6 and 7. There are 7 odd points because it's a 10 marker. Of course, you don't have the luxury of so much space. You cannot be explaining points so much. What you can do is you can very craftily, very creatively create bar charts, create flow diagrams where you do not have to explain each of these points. You can only write subheadings and then you can use one-liners or examples to explain them. The next part of the question is, how is RBI's Financial Inclusion Index useful towards financial inclusion? Now, again, a very, very straightforward question. We can do here what is, we can first highlight what RBI's Financial Inclusion Index basically means. Now, this is an index created by the RBI. There are 3 parameters here. One is access. Access has been given a weightage of 35%. Then you have usage and quality. Usage has been given a weightage of 45% and quality has been given a weightage of 20%. Now, what you can do here is you can use a connecting line. You can explain what RBI's Financial Inclusion Index is, what are the parameters and what are the weights assigned. Thereafter, you can proceed to answer the question, which is, how is RBI's Financial Inclusion Index going to foster financial inclusion in this country? Herein, we can use the following points. I have created some points of my own. First one is what? First one is the Financial Inclusion Index will help us identify gaps in our goal of financial inclusion. The index is built on 3 broad parameters: access, usage, and quality. It uses 97 distinct indicators. The structure helps authorities pinpoint exactly where the system is falling short, which means, is access a problem? Is usage a problem? That means people have access to bank accounts, but they're not using it. They somehow do not know how to use it. Or is the quality of financial services offered to people is that poor? To find out exactly where the problem is, Financial Inclusion Index is going to be extremely crucial. Now, once you have identified critical, crucial gaps, thereafter you have to plug those gaps as well, which means now policymakers can create very, very targeted policies depending upon the gaps that they have identified. FI Index provides a holistic view across the banking, insurance, investment, postal, and pension sectors. That means it does not include only banks, it includes banks and other financial institutions as well. And it is going to provide you a holistic view, the overall performance of the financial sector in this country across 3 parameters, which is access, usage, and quality. What does this do? This allows the government and the RBI to specifically serve the underserved sectors and design targeted interventions, because now there are multiple indicators. Wherever you are lagging behind, there can be a targeted policy, targeted intervention towards that specific area. Then you can talk about quality, which means the financial index does not just track access. It also tracks the quality of financial inclusion by measuring financial literacy, consumer protection, and grievance redressal mechanisms, which means normally, ordinarily, traditionally speaking, whenever we thought of financial inclusion, we will typically be talking about 2 aspects, which is, do people have access to formal financial services? The other aspect was, are people using these formal financial services or not? But this index also has a third parameter, which is the quality of financial services that these people are accessing or these people are using, which means it goes away from the traditional approach. It also focuses on quality. And the last point that we can talk about is cumulative progress, which means what? Which means that Financial Inclusion Index does not have a base year or a reference year. Every year, the score will be computed from 0 to 100. And this score is going to tell you what has been the cumulative performance of the financial system of this country towards the goal of financial inclusion. This is how it is an improvement over traditional inclusion indices. So very, very straightforward question here. One line, what you can talk about is one line conclusion, right? Because it's a 10 marker. Financial inclusion is a key driver of inclusive development. Strengthening access, usage, and quality can accelerate India's journey towards equitable growth. Right? A sweet conclusion to finish off this answer. Very, very simple question. Now, if you look at it, we have also asked in our mains test series a question which was largely similar. Discuss the key factors behind the rise in India's financial inclusion index between 2021 to 2025. Highlight its significance for inclusive economic growth. We have asked this question in this year's test series 2026. So somebody who has attempted this test before, he will have a ready answer to this question. He's not going to struggle. Next up, yeah. So this, you will also find it in Prahar, the booklets that we offer, right? Financial inclusion, the significance of financial inclusion, and the steps taken towards this direction. So you can call out points from these areas. The third question, can we, Geeta is saying, can we conclude with inclusive democracy, sir? Geeta, you can definitely use it, but because, see, this is where you have to understand that this is the general studies paper 3. And the question is with respect to Indian economy. Because it is in respect to Indian economy, so it will be better for you if your answer is more from an economic standpoint than from a political or a social or a cultural standpoint. Try and keep your question as close to the economic viewpoint as possible for you to score more marks. Many people complain that GS3 people typically struggle in terms of getting marks here. This is because what they know for polity, what they know about governance, what they know about international relations, history, all of that, people try to use up that knowledge and build answers to questions which are about Indian economy. So as far as possible, what you can do is try and stick to the economic viewpoint itself because it's GS3. Right? Now, question number 3, discuss the various technology missions initiated in Indian agriculture and examine their role in food security. Now, here there is a bunch of technology missions which have been introduced in this country. Because it's a 10 marker, 150 words, you do not have the space to mention everything. Right? You can't mention every technology mission. And because the question also asks you that you have to connect these technology missions, especially to food security, here what you can do is you can use some examples of technology missions, especially those which have a link in terms of food security, where food security basically means availability, accessibility, affordability, and quality of food grains. That means of so many technology missions in this country related to agriculture, you do not have to use up all because there's only 150 words. You have to pick up some of those technology missions which have some direct link with food security. Now, look at how I have introduced this question, right? There are 2 ways of introducing this question, if you can see here. One is technology missions go, let us define it. What are technology missions? Technology missions in Indian agriculture basically mean what? They are targeted mission mode government initiatives that are designed to solve specific bottlenecks, specific problems in agriculture through the use of technology. One way of introducing any answer, if you don't want to give it any thought, is just define the keyword here. How I have started this question is I have defined what technology missions are. But because this is quite boring, what we can do is we can also, start a little differently. One is define what a technology mission is. Technology mission is nothing. It is an intervention, a specific intervention wherein the government is trying to solve a specific problem with respect to Indian agriculture by using technology. Very, very, very simple definition. Or another way of starting this question is, right, in my classes, we discuss Green Revolution a lot. So what you can do here is this, right? Those who are my students will understand this better. Following the initial success of Green Revolution, India utilized technology missions to expand agricultural growth into food security, commercial crops, allied sectors, and sustainable farming. Which means if you actually think about it, Green Revolution itself, the program was called High Yielding Varieties Program. It was also called Seed Fertilizer Technology Program. It was technology that enabled us from becoming a barely subsistent food economy to a food surplus economy. So I have started by taking reference to the Green Revolution, and I have also highlighted a little bit of the evolution of tech missions in India. Then I will use a connecting line, right? If I have defined it or if I've used this introduction, then I will use a connecting line because I have to then discuss the role of technology missions in ensuring food security in India. And if you can see my connecting line is about the evolution of tech missions in India, which is While earlier technology missions focused heavily on establishing basic crop productivity, which means starting from the seed fertilizer technology program, the result of which was called Green Revolution. Earlier, our technology missions were mostly about productivity, but of late, especially since 2014, our initiatives represent a paradigm shift. That means they have fundamentally shifted their focus from merely crop productivity towards digital public infrastructure, because I remembered something called AgriStack, towards reducing import burdens, because there is a technology mission with respect to edible oil, and then farm mechanization, because there is a submission on agricultural mechanization, which is going to foster greater productivity, especially in context of India, where most of our farmers are small and marginal, and advanced livestock genetics. So I'm not targeting only crops, I'm also targeting livestock. Because the question is about food security, I will be hand picking the technology missions that I have to discuss here. I cannot be listing all the technology missions because I don't have the time, I don't have the space, right? Therefore, what I've done here is cleverly used a connecting line, only highlighting the evolution, which means that before 2014, most of our technology missions were about crop productivity. But since 2014, there has been a paradigmatic shift. We have, of course, crop productivity in our focus, but we are also looking at other areas, which is digital infrastructure. That means giving digital access to farmers, reducing our import burden, mechanization of farms in India, and advanced livestock genetics. This is the connecting line that I will be using, and then I will be throwing answers and points here. Now I will be listing specific technology missions. For example, I have begun with the seed fertilizer technology program, also popularly called the high yielding varieties program, the result of which was called Green Revolution. I will start from here. Why? Because the question asks me to link it to food security, and what better way of starting this answer with a reference to Green Revolution itself, which was, if not a technology mission, but it was definitely a program related to technological intervention. The seed fertilizer technology program enabled India to become a food surplus nation from a barely food subsistence economy. Then I have jumped to another mission, which is the technology mission on oil seeds. See, if you can see here, I am talking about what? I'm talking about productivity first, Green Revolution I've introduced here. Then I'm talking about reducing import burden as well. Because we know that we import most of our edible oil requirements. So we have a technology mission on oil seeds. Before the birth of WTO, this was responsible for what is called the yellow revolution in India. This was the responsible factor for Green Revolution. And then you had a yellow revolution introduced during Rajiv Gandhi's government, if I'm not mistaken, 1987. So I have taken a reference to the technology mission on oil seeds as well, which fostered yellow revolution in India till before the birth of WTO. Post WTO, our situation has again worsened, but we have adopted another mission on oil seeds. Remember that the tech mission on oil seeds, also called the yellow revolution, started in 1987. By 1995, our oilseed production had again substantially taken a hit because of the emergence of the World Trade Organization. And ever since, we have been import dependent. But of late, we have also started the National Mission on Edible Oils, oil palm, the National Mission on Oilseeds, then NMEO 2024. What does this one focus on? Focuses heavily on expanding oil palm cultivation, especially in the Northeast and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And what does this mission focus on? Boosting traditional primary oil seeds like mustard, soybean, groundnut, with a strict target of achieving 72% self-sufficiency is in domestic edible oil by the year 2030 and 31. This point is mainly about how tech missions are reducing or are focusing on reducing India's import dependence, especially for edible oil. Then we are talking about a point related to livestock. In terms of livestock, we can mention the Rashtriya Gokul Mission. A question like this had been asked in prelims itself. So if you are writing mains this year, of course, you would know about the Rashtriya Gokul Mission. This is about boosting productivity, but in the livestock sector, the allied sector of agriculture. It introduced advanced biotechnology to grassroots level farming, promoting techniques like genomic selection, in vitro fertilization, use of sex-sorted semen to increase the birth rate of high-yielding female calves. So if you can see clearly here, we are not talking just about crops, we are also including the allied sectors, more specifically livestock, because the question requires us to connect tech missions with food security. Right? Then we can use others. First one is digital agricultural mission. Because these are latest interventions, so I will not be only talking about historical interventions. Latest interventions should be included here. The Agri Stack, then Krishi Decision Support System, and the National Pest Surveillance System. You don't have to explain them in such details. Even if you mention them in a flowchart or something, this will be good enough. Right? We can talk about the National Mission on Agricultural Extension and Technology 2014, under which there is a submission on agricultural mechanization. This is about capital formation in agriculture. We remember, and in our classes, we have discussed multiple times that majority farmers in India, 86% farmers in India, are small and marginal. Because they are small and marginal, they cannot make private investments. For example, their farm incomes are so low, they cannot invest, let's say, in combine harvesters, they cannot invest in tractors, they cannot invest in integrated irrigation systems because it requires a lot of money. So what we have done is we have created a submission on agricultural mechanization, under which custom hiring centers will be created. Those who cannot afford to buy a tractor can at least rent it from the government. So we can talk about this here too. Right? There are a bunch of points that you can mention here. Right? Like I said, because it's a 10 marker, we cannot have so many tech missions involved here. We can talk about some of the past, we can talk about some which are happening currently, and we have to carefully handpick those technology missions which have a specific link to what has been asked in the question, which is food security. For example, I will not introduce tech mission on cotton here because cotton has got nothing to do with food security. I will only pick up those tech missions which have a direct link with food security and nothing else. 10 marker, we can wrap up this question by introducing most of these tech missions, and then we can conclude tech missions have strengthened India's food security by enhancing productivity, resilience, and sustainability. Right? Good enough. A one-line conclusion should be good enough for this answer. Right? A very, very straightforward question. It's not a very deeply analytical question at all, not in the least. Right? So if you have your notes, in your notes, you will find tech missions. You just have to pick those tech missions which have a direct link with food security. Yeah. Matsya Sampada Yojana can be added here. Geeta is absolutely correct. Very, very good. Like I said, we do not have to focus only on crop farming. We can also focus on livestock. So if you have good examples, you can use those good examples to highlight here. But again, like I said, there will be more than a dozen tech missions in this country, and it's a 10 markers. You cannot list all of those tech missions. You have to handpick some. You have to handpick only those which have a direct link with food security, because you do not have the time nor the space to write a very, very elaborate answer. That is what is important. Right? In our SRIJAN daily test, right, number 32, question number 3, how is technology reshaping agricultural sector in India? Analyze its potential and challenges in promoting farmer-centric agricultural growth. Although this is not exactly what has been asked, but if you have attempted this question, you would have some decent points. You can pick up some examples of tech missions which you can handpick and use in establishing their link with food security. All right. So these questions we practice a lot. These questions you will also find the content related to these questions in our booklets as well. Right. Of course, they will not ask you the exact same question, but if you have read these booklets, if you have attempted tests, you will be in a very sweet spot to answer these questions. Now, next one is explain the factors responsible for the inefficiency of agriculture produce marketing. How does e-commerce help to reduce inefficiency in agriculture produce marketing? Explain. Now, this is a question all of my students should be very, very comfortable with because we have discussed this chapter in such great detail. Like I said, there are so many points they can mention here, right? Here, what do? Should I explain inefficiency as to what it means? Absolutely not. I will use another keyword, which is agriculture produce marketing. To begin very, very quickly, I will simply define what agriculture produce marketing means. And then I will address the question. Reasons for inefficiency of agriculture produce marketing in India. First up, what is agriculture produce marketing? It is the performance of all those activities except the core activity of cultivation through which farm produce reaches its end use. This is how we define agricultural marketing, and then we straight up jump to the body part where we'll be addressing the relevant requirements of this question. The question asks you factors responsible for inefficiency of agricultural produce marketing in India, of course. Now, what are the various factors? We have discussed them at such length in our classes. So you should be very, very comfortable here. First one is market density. The National Commission on Agriculture proposed one market for a 5-kilometer radius. That means one market for 80 square kilometers roughly. And in India, the average geographical area served by an APMC mandi across India stands to be around 500 square kilometers. The recommendation is one for 80 square kilometers. The reality is that in India, one mandi serves an area of 496 square kilometers, which means that market density is pretty poor. In fact, you can also point out that there are interstate variations here too. Some states have very, very good market density, for example, Punjab, while if you look at the states of Northeast, not a lot of markets, 1 per 11,000 square kilometers. You can point out that. First is market density, then we can talk about licensing barriers. We can talk about how in the APMCs, the trader LCA lobby, how they restrict competition by creating very, very stringent licensing requirements. They do not allow new entrants to come and participate in the trade here. And because they kill competition, they also cripple the finances of APMC itself. And if APMC's finances are crippled, you will have very, very poor infrastructure, which you will highlight here, that there is a lack of market infrastructure. Throw some points in here. Covered and open auction platforms exist only in about 2/3 of the regulated markets. Cold storages exist only in about 15% of operational APMC mandis. Because of an absence of competition, the sources of finances for APMC, they get crippled, and because it's the APMC's task for minor infrastructure upgradation of mandis, APMCs themselves are crippled in terms of finances. How will they create good infrastructure? You will highlight how in bad shape the market infrastructure exists in mandis in India. Then we will talk about how bad infrastructure leads to wastages in the supply chain. In India, the wastage is somewhere between 4 to 15%. This is a study by a NABARD's consultancy service called NABCONS. NABCONS highlighted that post-harvest losses in India range between 4 to 15%. And what do post-harvest losses do? Post-harvest losses, they increase the prices for the end consumers. Then we can also talk about high incidence of market charges, which means that APMCs are authorized to collect market fee, APMCs are authorized to collect user charges, APMCs are authorized to collect taxes such as vehicle entry taxes. In addition, you have licensed commission agents, they also charge their own commission. So if we look at all the charges, these charges can amount somewhere between 8.5 to 15%. Now, these charges are either recovered from the consumer or these charges are passed on to the farmers, which creates what is called artificial price dispersion. We can also talk about fragmentation of markets. Many states in India, markets are fragmented in the sense every market is operated by their own APMC, different license requirements, different amounts of taxes. Fragmentation of markets is also a contributory factor towards artificial price dispersion. We have discussed this topic in our class in very, very good length, and they have thankfully asked a question which is straight up from the class itself. All right, we can talk about this. Geeta is saying warehouses. Geeta, that will be included here itself, market infrastructure, right? But yes, use your points. Definitely use your points. Once you have highlighted factors responsible for inefficiency, then you have to quickly wrap up how e-commerce reduces marketing inefficiency. Here you can throw in the example of eNAM, Electronic National Agricultural Market. What does it do? Because it's an online space, it is going to help farmers tide over physical constraints, the constraints of physical markets. It's going to create an integrated national market wherein multiple mandis across different states will be connected on a common platform. What does this do? Real-time market data. That means you can look at prices, you can look at availability, and you can look at quality. Farmers can do the same, traders can do the same, other buyers can do the same. They will get information in real time. This will also create price transparency because prices will be seen by everyone. Direct farmer buyer connects, which means that farmers can sell directly to buyers. They do not have to depend upon middlemen such as the license commission agents. You can also talk about better price realization. Why? Because if farmer is selling directly to the buyer, there is no middleman involved here. That means farmer is going to get the lion's share of what the buyer is going to pay. Efficient price realization. We can also talk about that digital supply. Eventually, investments in this sector can lead to efficient logistics, warehouses, cold chains, and also cause reduced wastage, which means e-commerce is a solution in terms of creating an efficient market, right? Throw in an example here because the government already has electronic national agricultural market. Why not use that example here itself? It's a 10 marker, so not a lot of luxury, right? You cannot explain everything here. You can highlight these in blocks. Towards the conclusion, what we can talk about is e-commerce can transform agricultural marketing by improving transparency, efficiency, and market access for farmers as well as buyers, leading to greater farm price realization. A single line conclusion, good enough because it's a 10 marker. Let's move to the next one. Critically evaluate the supply chain constraints faced by Indian farmers in marketing their produce. How can policy intervention address these issues? This was Mains wala question and answer bank, GS3, question number 68, page number 80. Again, we have discussed this at length in our classes, so I don't think you will be having a problem here. All right. The fifth 10 marker, normally you ask 4 10 markers and 4 15 markers. This year we had 5 10 markers and 4 15 markers. The fifth one is about, and the question itself tells you, give us 2 examples and show how biotechnology has helped Indian farmers to preserve their perishable crops. A very, very straightforward question, right? He is himself telling you that you have to give only 2 examples. You do not have to go, out of bounds. You don't have to give multiple examples. Just give us 2 examples. Explain how biotechnology helps farmers preserve their perishable crops. What you can talk about here is 2 examples. For example, we have used the example of BT brinjal. BT brinjal does what? BT brinjal introduces the BT gene from Bacillus, the Thuringiensis, through biotechnology. What does it do? It provides resistance against fruit and shoot borers, which is a major pest that infests brinjal crops. Eventually, what it does is it preserves crop quality for longer, which means introduction of a specific gene into a certain crop using biotechnology increases the crop quality, increases the shelf life of the crop itself by preventing damage. In fact, a better example of this could be bio-based edible coatings. Biotechnology-based natural coatings made from materials like chitosan, starch, and plant-based polymers are applied on fruits and vegetables. What do these coatings do? These coatings form a thin protective layer that slows moisture loss, microbial growth, and increases shelf life, which helps preserve perishable crops such as fruits and vegetables during storage and transportation. Now, because he himself has told you to give us only 2 examples, you use only 2 examples and highlight how biotechnology helps farmers preserve especially perishable crops, and that's about it. All right. Great then. Okay. Question number 11 from Indian economy. Explain the key challenges for India's energy security. A favorite question of mine. What measures do you suggest for ensuring energy security alongside economic growth and sustainability? So what you have to talk about here is challenges to energy security in India, and then you have to suggest measures as to how India can tackle these challenges to energy security while keeping economic growth as well as sustainability in mind, right? 2 parts to this question. Because it's a 15 marker, you will have more space and more time to write this answer as well. First, focusing on key challenges for India's energy security, and then focusing on How can these challenges be solved while keeping growth and sustainability in mind? Again, the same format: introduction, body, conclusion. Now here there are two parts to this question. So I will begin with a basic introduction. The basic introduction will be about what is meant by energy security. Energy security is nothing. It is simply uninterrupted availability at affordable prices. Quality energy available without any interruptions at affordable prices is what we call energy security. Then we have to talk about for India. This remains challenging due to heavy import dependence, continued reliance on fossil fuels, even as growing demand calls for a more sustainable energy security strategy. So you can start with a one or a two-liner introduction and then focus on what has been specifically asked by this question. The question first one is, what are the key challenges for ensuring India's energy security? And if you look at these points here, you will understand it better. First one is rising demand. Rising demand means what? Broadly speaking, energy will have three use cases. Energy will be used by households, energy will be used for commercial enterprises, and energy will be used for agriculture. As India's population increases, the consumption, domestic consumption by households, it is likely to increase. As India marches towards economic growth, as we continue to foster more and more businesses, as we are continuing to foster towards production of more goods and services, commercial enterprises are also going to require more energy. Now, if you are looking at higher energy requirements, higher demand or the anticipation of higher demand in the future is a challenge, which is what has been mentioned here. Meeting the rising demand in this country, it is a significant challenge. The primary challenge is scaling up the energy landscape rapidly to meet the growing demand of a developing economy while simultaneously transitioning to cleaner sources. Highlight this, that we have to not only focus on increasing our energy sources, increasing our installed capacity, we also have to keep in mind the other challenge, which is that we cannot be dependent upon unclean sources of energy. We have to switch towards cleaner sources. That is a significant challenge, that we are looking at a higher demand in the future. This higher demand has to be serviced from cleaner sources, which is a pressing challenge. The next point that you can mention here is import dependence. Of course, any answer, any aspirant worth his weight in gold is going to definitely mention this. What is India's next big challenge? The next big challenge is import dependence. We have historically relied heavily on imported fossil fuels, and you can throw in some data here. India imports over 85% of its crude oil requirements, making it one of the biggest import burdens for India. Very, very linked with import dependence is supply shocks. In fact, you can highlight here the recent issue, the US-Israel versus Iran issue here. How the recent supply shock for a moment had created a crisis of energy in our country. Insulation from supply shocks, that is a challenge, which means India faces the ongoing challenge of strengthening domestic resources to insulate the economy from global supply shocks. For example, price spikes during the Russia-Ukraine conflict. In fact, what you can talk about is also the recent Strait of Hormuz conflict that happened here. Then third thing is grid stability. What does grid stability mean? It means when you look at conventional sources of energy, the fossil fuels based sources of energy or hydroelectric energy, you will find that those supply sources are uninterrupted. But because we are looking towards a cleaner transition, we will be looking at wind energy, we will be looking at solar energy. Both wind energy and solar energy are intermittent in nature, which creates problems for the grid infrastructure. And that is what has been mentioned here. Because we are looking to make a clean transition, we have to add wind capacity, we have to add solar capacity. Because both of these sources are interrupted sources, it creates problems with respect to grid stability. India's grid stability will remain a pressing challenge. As variable renewable energy sources like solar and wind expand, maintaining grid stability and reliable power generation becomes a crucial technical challenge. Then you have decarbonizing the industrial sector, which means what? That we are looking to transition towards cleaner sources, right? We have net zero emission targets. Now, households, you can force this change on. Agriculture, maybe you can force this change on. But what about those sectors which require excessive amounts of energy, especially the industrial structure? How do we decarbonize the industrial sector, which uses up most of the energy requirements of this country? That will remain a pressing challenge. Then you will have universal energy access, ensuring equitable access to basic energy needs. For example, India's burgeoning population, many people who are not very well to do, you have to make sure that they have 24/7 access to cleaner fuels, cleaner cooking fuels such as LPG, which will remain a pressing concern for India. And towards the end, we can also talk about, in our classes on power subsidy, we have discussed this too, which is the fiscal, more specifically the financial performance of discoms in this country. How discoms are in such bad shape, because of which Uday scheme was launched, then Uday 2.0 was launched, then revamped distribution sector scheme was also launched in 2020, right? So you have to highlight challenges, right? Challenges means what? That as we are progressing towards growth and sustainability, what are the challenges that we are likely to encounter? Then how do we solve these challenges? I have suggested a four-pronged approach. I have suggested an approach for conventional sources and then non-conventional sources. If you look at this answer here, you will find that measures for ensuring security, growth and sustainability. First one is strengthening domestic fossil fuel sources, which means that we cannot ignore our traditional sources of energy. We have to focus on strengthening the domestic fossil fuel resources. Maximizing coal production in India. In fact, I have given so many data points here. India has aggressively increased production to 1,040 million tons in the financial year 2025-26, resulting in a 27.4% decline in coal imports for thermal plants. That means we want to reduce our import dependence. We are focusing on domestic coal supply, increasing production here, right? Because we want to reduce our import dependence. Then I also talked about coal gasification. Why is coal gasification necessary? Because there has to be a cleaner transition. So we have to focus on domestic conventional sources, maximize coal production, focus on coal gasification, promoting surface. Coal lignite gasification not only utilizes domestic coal cleanly, but is projected to mobilize 2.5 to 3 lakh crores in investments and generate 50,000 jobs, because the question is also growth and sustainability. So we are talking about the cleanliness of coal gasification, and we are also talking about how this is going to invite a lot of investments and create a lot of jobs in this country, foster economic growth. Then we can talk about offshore exploration. There is a project, the Samudra Manthan project, an 84,000 crore rupees of project was launched in 2026. Why? To boost deep water oil and gas exploration, strengthening domestic fuel reserves. So my first prong of this strategy is that our conventional sources of energy, they have to be enhanced, purely because India is going to have a rising demand of energy in the future. Then we can talk about rapid expansion of renewable capacity. One, we focus on what? One, we focus on our conventional sources. Second, then we focus on will be renewable energy sources. Why? Because a cleaner transition is necessary. Herein, we have talked about a multiple points here. For example, first one is solar scaling. Initiatives like Pradhan Mantri Surya Ghar scheme incentivizes households to install rooftop solars. We give them subsidies for rooftop solars. Second, Pradhan Mantri Surya Sarovar Yojana, what is it doing? It is pioneering floating solar projects paired with energy storage. That means we are trying to add more and more solar energy capacity to the grid. Then wind power indigenization. There has been a scheme with respect to domestic manufacturing of wind turbines. I mentioned here, to support economic growth, domestic manufacturing of wind turbines has been scaled up. It has been increased, achieving 70 to 80% indigenization. That means we'll be making our wind turbines here in the country itself, which will also foster growth as well as employment. India has added a record 6 gigawatts in the financial year 2026 of wind energy. Then I've also spoken about hydroelectric power. The small hydropower development scheme is adding 1500 megawatts of capacity, particularly in hilly and northeastern regions, to provide reliable base load power which can supplement the grid against variable solar and wind energy. Right? Grid stability is the concern here. Then we have geothermal exploration too. The 2025 National Policy on Geothermal Energy is mapping resources and setting up pilot plants to harness Earth's heat, providing another steady, non-variable renewable source. Which means first strategy will be conventional sources, the second one will be renewable sources. Then there is a third layer to this strategy too, which is nuclear, go atomic. Because Shanti Act was passed, right, in reference to that year, right, in reference to that development, I will also use that point here, which is the third aspect, modernizing nuclear energy. Here you can talk about the landmark act, which is the Shanti Act, which enables greater private sector participation in nuclear energy production while strengthening regulatory safety and capping civil liability. Right? You can definitely add here these points. Then you can talk about small modular reactors. The government is investing 20,000 crore rupees to design and deploy at least 5 indigenous, that means our own, small modular reactors by 2033. So first is your conventional fossil fuels, second is renewable sources, and third is atomic energy. Fourth point, which I have also introduced here, is with respect to biocircular economy. Right, we can talk about the Gobardhan initiative and the green hydrogen initiative too. The biocircular economy. What is the Gobardhan initiative? Scheme to turn organic waste into energy and increase domestic compressed biogas production tenfold. We want to increase biogas production in the country tenfold, for which the government has initiated what is called the Gobardhan initiative. We also have the green hydrogen mission. The National Green Hydrogen Mission is establishing an entirely new clean fuel ecosystem highlighted by pilot projects for hydrogen-powered vehicles and trains. There is a 4-pronged strategy here, which means that because we are looking at increased consumption in the future and increased demand in the future, and we are also focusing on transition, a cleaner transition, so we will have to have a multi-pronged strategy. First one is your conventional fossil fuels. So highlight India's interventions here. Second one is your renewable sources, because your energy mix cannot be solely conventional fossil fuels. You have to attain the net zero emission targets. Then you have to focus on atomic energy, nuclear energy. And the fourth pronged approach is biocircular economy. Because if you have been following news very closely, you will find that all of these developments are in the news. So why not use them? Why not throw in some examples of actual missions which are happening in India, throw in some data points, make your average answer an excellent answer and score the maximum points which are available. This is the answer to this question. Now let's move to the next question. Right. Look at the conclusion here. A diversified, efficient, renewable-driven strategy backed by strong infrastructure and institutional reforms can help India secure energy access while sustaining inclusive, sustainable economic growth. And a generic conclusion will do. Next question. How are startups in India promoting entrepreneurship, innovation, and employment? Discuss the global and domestic challenges in their working and suggest suitable measures to overcome these challenges. Startups or early ventures, what they are asking you is, how are startups in India promoting entrepreneurship, innovation, and employment? You'll have to use examples to throw in, you can say, throw in behind your arguments, back your arguments with examples. India's startup ecosystem has emerged as a key driver of entrepreneurship, innovation, as well as employment generation, supported by digital infrastructure, policy support, and a growing culture of innovation in this country. A generic introduction will do. Next is, how is it promoting the spirit of innovation, entrepreneurship, as well as promoting employment? You will have to use examples here. For example, in terms of promoting entrepreneurship, right? The Startup India mission, it is encouraging a culture of risk-taking, particularly amongst the Indian youth. Promoting innovation. We are focusing on technology-based innovations. For example, the most rapid strides that India has made, especially our private sector, has been in fintech. Right? We are also now moving towards space technology. So you can throw in some examples of startups related to fintech, startups related to space technologies. Then you can also talk about direct employment generation. Here you can use the example of gig economies. Your hyper local delivery chains, your Blinkit, your Instamart, your Zeptos. You can talk about Uber, you can talk about Ola, you can talk about, let's say, Rapido for that matter. All of these are based on the gig economy model, and they are creating so many jobs for so many people, fostering direct employment generation. You will have to use examples here to back your arguments. Without any examples, your answer will be lackluster. Right? What is the role of startups in promoting entrepreneurship, innovation, and employment? Like I said, in technology-based solutions, you should talk about this very, very famous startup, which is Razorpay. Right? Here you can talk about Ola. Here you can talk about Rapido. Although Uber is not an Indian company, right? You can talk about, let's say, Zomato, which is an Indian company. You can talk about Swiggy, right? You can talk about Blinkit. All of those promoting gig economy in India, creating so many jobs for people. Then we can talk about global challenges and Indian challenges. What are the global challenges? Global challenges are with respect to funding uncertainty. Startups cannot foster in the absence of capital. So funding is crucial for any startup to at least try an idea. Then global competition, rapid technological changes, especially with the emergence of AI. Right? Then you have domestic challenges faced by startups. Domestic challenges you should give a little more stress on. First is regulatory complexity, limited early stage funding, skill gaps, infrastructure constraints. For example, regulatory complexity, you can talk about the ease of doing business in India, ease of starting a business, registering a business, conducting the business, as well as exiting from the business, which has gone bad. Right? We can talk about ease of doing business, although India has improved, but India is still not where it needs to be. Then you can talk about limited early stage funding. Because India is a low saving economy, the cost of capital in India will be higher, especially compared to our counterparts, China in our backyard. Cost of capital here in India is very, very high. Cost of capital in China is not as high. You can talk about skill gaps. You can talk about how only 8% of India's graduates are in high skill roles. You can talk about how employability of people in India, graduates as well as diploma holders, is a pressing concern. Startups cannot foster in the absence of people who lack the required skills. You can talk about infrastructural constraints. Here you can talk about multiple things: roads, highways, railways, inland waterways, how we have underutilized our own capacity because of poor infrastructure. These are the challenges that you should be focusing more on, because again, you are appearing for civil services of India. Then you can focus on measuring of overcoming these challenges, strengthening the funding ecosystem, simplifying regulations, promoting ease of doing business, promoting R&D, skill development schemes. Right, which is to say, whatever challenge you have mentioned, just write a solution with respect to those challenges and then conclude your answer. Generic question, it's not a question that people will find difficulty answering. In our SRIJAN sectional tests, a decade after the launch of Startup India, examine the initiative's contribution to entrepreneurship, employment generation, and innovation in the economy. What structural challenges continue to limit India's startup ecosystem from scaling globally? We have asked this question, test number 4, question number 12. So if you have attempted this test, there is a good chance that you have some points ready-made that you can throw into your answer and finish it off quickly. Then we'll move to the next question. How has Indian agriculture been transformed from food scarcity to food surplus level? Explain the various government policies implemented for the diversification of Indian agriculture. Remember, there are two different questions here. One is, how has Indian agriculture transformed itself from scarcity to surplus? The second question is, what government policies are related to diversification of Indian agriculture? Now, this is a very, very simple question. First one, we can talk about around the time of independence. Right, Indian food economy was marred with food shortages, the problem of affordability too. We were a low productivity, low production subsystem. Thereafter, the Indian government initiated a series of structural institutional, technological reforms that has transformed India from a barely food subsistence economy dependent on import and aid to a food surplus nation, wherein not only do we have the world's largest food security program and we are exporting a lot of it as well, right? Herein, your answer cannot be complete without mentioning Green Revolution. So first requirement here is to talk about Green Revolution, adoption of high-yielding varieties of seeds, assured irrigation and fertilizer support. This transformed India from a barely subsistence food economy to a food surplus nation. Then we can talk about agricultural research and extension services. Because Green Revolution was a technological intervention and we are talking about the time 1966 to 1969, literacy rates in India were also not very high. Farmers in India also did not have the required technological know-how, which is why the National Extension Services Program was created to disseminate this information across farmers. Without dissemination of this information, Green Revolution would not have been a success. So we are pointing out the role of Indian Council for Agricultural Research and agricultural universities in developing improved varieties. Although we imported most of them, but we also had our own indigenous variety called C306. Then expansion of irrigation, right? Although India's irrigation potential still stands at around 55%, closer to the time of independence, it was only 17%. So we definitely have focused on expanding irrigation potential of India. Then we can also talk about institutional support. And please remember, this is a very, very important point. Institutional support in the form of two things. One is input support. The government supports farmers at the input level by providing farm subsidies. The government also supports the farmers at the output level by providing them price support as well as regulating agricultural markets, both of which are absolutely necessary to transform India from a barely subsistence economy to a food surplus nation. Then we have technological advancements, digital tools, modern farming practices, improved efficiency. Then you can talk about more modern initiatives. Thereafter, you have to focus on the second part of the question, which is which governmental policies have focused on diversification of agriculture. At Green Revolution majorly held two crops only, which was rice and wheat. Now we have to address the second requirement of this question, which is which policies are aimed at diversification of Indian agriculture. Herein you can talk about Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana. You can talk about National Food Security Mission, which promoted pulses, oilseeds and coarse grains. Then we can talk about National Livestock Mission, which is around livestock itself, the allied sector of agriculture in India. We can talk about the Mission for Integrated Development of Horticulture, MIDH, promotes horticultural high-value crops. We can talk about Paramparagat Krishi Vikas Yojana, which promotes organic farming. We can talk about the Rashtriya Gokul Mission, which strengthens India's domestic indigenous varieties, right? Livestock varieties. We can also talk about Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, which is focusing on the development of fishery sector as an allied sector in India. Focus not on Green Revolution, move away from rice and wheat and talk about other crops here. What are the other policy interventions that the government has taken promoting diversification of agriculture in India? Right? Remember, two separate questions. Very good. Geeta appears to be very, very well read. Very good, Geeta. Right? Conclusion, India's transition from food scarcity to surplus reflects the success of technology-led agricultural development. Future agricultural growth depends upon diversification towards high-value, sustainable and market-oriented farming systems. Generic conclusion will do. Now we have the last question, which is the question on different types of subsidies and the issues India faces when it comes to WTO regarding these. Standard question, very, very easy question for you to answer. You can first define different types of subsidy. I would recommend you start with what is meant by a subsidy. You can say subsidy is a financial contribution that comes from the government with the intent of reducing somebody's burden or to influence a certain behavior. Then you can talk about that the government provides subsidies to the farmers at the input level. You can talk about multiple types of subsidies here. Talk about input subsidies, right? Input subsidies mein, there's a bunch of subsidies that you can talk about here, which is fertilizer subsidies, power subsidies, irrigation subsidies, credit subsidy, crop insurance subsidy. At the input level, the government provides a lot of subsidies. We have taken multiple classes on subsidies, agricultural subsidies in India. Then we can also talk about price support because the WTO considers price support to be a subsidy. Government does actively provide price support, right? You can mention this too, but this is at the output level. What you can do is you can talk about input level subsidies and then you can talk about output level subsidies, right? Input level pay, this is what we call farm subsidies. Output level pay, we can talk about price support, right? Explain them if you possibly can. Right? You have input subsidies, farm inputs pay fertilizer, electricity, irrigation. Then we can talk about capital. That means credit subsidy, interest subvention schemes. Then you can talk about price support. The government has MSP, price support mechanisms. You can here talk about price support scheme of the government. You can talk about the central pool through which the government procures rice and wheat at MSP. Then you can talk about income support. PM Kisan is an initiative here. You can talk about credit subsidies, like I said, interest subvention scheme, risk management, which is Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Each of these subsidies we have discussed at length in the class. You don't have to explain each of them. Just mention the name and mention what the purpose is, right? Why is the subsidy given? That's about it. Once you have discussed the different types of subsidies, both at the input as well as at the output level, then proceed to answer the next part of the question, which is challenges with respect to WTO. Now, WTO has a certain agreement. This agreement is called the Agreement on Agriculture under GATT. The Agreement on Agriculture has three broad pillars. One is market access, the second one is domestic support, and the third one is export subsidy. This question is about domestic support, which means what are the challenges that India faces with respect to the WTO's Agreement on Agriculture. All the challenges are with respect to the amber box subsidies, which is to say our price support mechanisms are classified under the amber box, and amber box subsidies are those where the WTO considers them to be trade distorting. Therefore, these barriers, they have to be reduced. This is where India's problem begins from. We can talk about how the WTO considers India's MSP related procurement to be a trade distortion. Therefore, it has to be brought down to a level which is called de minimis. How much will be de minimis? De minimis for developing economies is 10%, right? We can also talk about how India's public stock holding creates issues here because India has the biggest food security program in the entire world. We cover 67% of our population. We give them rice, we give them wheat, which we procure at MSP. Therefore, we continually keep breaching this de minimis level. India is the only country which breaches this de minimis level so consistently, right? Which is why this is a pressing concern with WTO. We can also talk about the other aspect, which is that the developed countries have very cleverly classified their own subsidies, which is direct farm income support, under the green box. As long as direct farm income support is not related to production or value, it can be classified under the green box. Developed countries give a lot of income support to their farmers, which they have cleverly classified under the green box, while our MSP related procurement has been put under the amber box, which is again a pressing concern. So you have to highlight WTO Agreement on Agriculture. The same question was asked in the year 2013 as well, right? Similar question here that you can write an answer to. Then you can talk about way forward, promoting green box support, increase investment in research, infrastructure, extension services. We have to focus on targeted support, which means we provide a lot of subsidies. These subsidies, majorly these subsidies are indirect subsidies that creates a lot of problems with respect to leakages, diversions, a lot of fiscal loss for the country. So we have to move towards targeted support. We can talk about reforms in WTO. WTO is by and large at a standstill at this point in time after the Bali Agreement. Then you have to promote sustainable agriculture. Very, very straightforward question, right? Very, very simple to answer. This year, thankfully, Indian economy was one part where questions did not really baffle the aspirants. If you had prepared well, I don't think any of these questions you would have found challenging. Very, very straightforward questions. And with that said, I will conclude my part with respect to the discussion on GS Paper 3, Economy and Agriculture. I hope you had fun and I hope you found this useful. Thank you. economy and agriculture. I hope you had fun and I hope you found this useful. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ranjan sir, for a detailed discussion of economics. Now it is our time to start with the context of environment and disaster management. So let us look at the questions which have come from the domain of environment and disaster management. So we'll see there are total 4 questions which were there, and the level of difficulty which I would like to tell you guys is, again, they were what? Moderately difficult, or I should give one more keyword here, easy to moderate level of difficulty. And why this moderate term also I used is, because there are certain questions in which you require some factual information. Otherwise, they all are easy questions. They all are questions which are easy to interpret. And therefore, the questions from the domain of environment and disaster management were very easy to moderate this time. And I hope you will not be finding any question a bouncer. And almost all the questions were there from our class notes only. Further, if you talk about for the detailed PDF analysis and answers of what we are discussing here, you can go on a Telegram and can type @UPSC Fix to connect with the Telegram community. All the answers will be shared there, and more than 80,000 people are what already joined there, and they are taking the advantage of all the related UPSC content which you can access as well. Now, talking about the context of environment and disaster management, we have 3 questions from the domain of environment, and 1 question was specifically from the domain of disaster management. Let us see them one by one, and let us see how beautifully we can structure the answer, what was the demand of the question, how you can actually get an extra marks and extra edge from your competitors while you're writing these questions from the domain of environment and disaster management. So the first question which came as a 10 marker, again a very straightforward theme, again a theme which you have been reading in your current affairs in the classes. This is a very basic thing. And the question is, discuss how the contradiction between rapid infrastructure development and disaster risk reduction in ecologically sensitive areas of India can be managed with suitable examples. One important insight this time that we can see from the question papers is that UPSC in itself is asking specifically with what? With the suitable examples, with the suitable diagrams, with suitable sketches, and that means there are people and aspirants who are not giving examples, data, fact, figure, graphs, diagrams, maps. And if you're not, UPSC will ask specifically, and if they are asking specifically, now if you're not giving, you will not be awarded good marks. One important thing is that. Now let us understand the theme, the core of the question. It is saying that there exists a sort of contradiction between the rapid infrastructure development and the disaster risk reduction in the ecologically sensitive areas. What are ecologically sensitive areas? As soon as the term ecologically sensitive area comes into your mind, you should be knowing the context of the Himalayan ecosystem, the Western Ghats ecosystems. So all these are highly fragile and tectonically active regions of our country. And therefore, what is the contradiction? That there exists rapid infrastructure push. We have the Char Dham project, in which there was an important objective of road widening. And because of the road widening in the Char Dham project in Uttarakhand, we have seen that there is increase in the landslide events in those locations. Further, we have another infrastructure push in the context of Himalayan region. We have Tehri Dam, which is in the seismic zone 4 and 5 of the country. Again, a highly hazard zone becoming in process, and therefore there is a contradiction which exists. Now how this can be managed beautifully, and you have to also give with examples. So you can start your answer with a basic introduction that India's push for rapid infrastructure development in ecologically fragile zones like Himalayas, Western Ghats, coastal areas often increases the disaster vulnerability, creating a tension between growth imperatives, that is the economic development, and the disaster risk reduction ideology and the objective with which we are going. DRR Sendai framework, you must have been knowing it. Now just after the introduction, you have to draw the map of India. So while completing the case of introduction, you will be drawing the case of map of India. You have to draw the map of India, and what you have to show is, you have to show in this map the important what hotspots. Hotspots which are what? Which are environmentally what? Which are environmentally sensitive. And here what you will be doing is, here you will be focusing on the context of what? On the context of Himalayas that we have. So we'll be showing the context of what? Himalayas that we have. We have the context of what? Western Ghats that we have. We have the context of what? The coastal areas, and therefore the coastal areas can also be shown it here like this case. So these are our what? Coastal areas. These are coastal areas, coastal areas, coastal areas, and not to forget the case of Andaman and Nicobar group of islands, and the case of what? Lakshadweep islands, and therefore we'll be what? Showcasing them as well. And this is the context of them. So these are the important hotspots of what? Ecologically, environmentally sensitive locations in the country, and there is developmental imperative, developmental push there, infrastructure push is there, and we are seeing a contradiction. So how you can manage this contradiction? That on one side you need what? On one side you need that the remotest corner of the country should be what? Should come under the ambit of what? Infrastructure. But on the other side you see that they are what? Ecologically and environmentally sensitive, and therefore any trigger beyond a certain threshold can actually lead to what? Can actually lead to more disastrous kind of what? Situations. That is the context. So what are the contradictions? You can see the nature of contradiction is ecological disruption. Sometimes we go for what? Road widening projects, hydropower and tunneling aspects. They actually destabilize the slope. And we have seen empirically this under the case of what? Char Dham road project, in which an important objective was what? Road widening. And while doing this, there is what? Increased landslide which was seen in Uttarakhand. So that is the contradiction. On one hand, you are what? Trying to go for the rapid infrastructure push in these hilly, mountainous and rugged terrains, but on the other hand, you are getting what? The disaster, instead of what? Reducing, they are getting increased. Second, climate sensitivity. Infrastructure in glacial and coastal zones faces what? Heightened risk from what? Extreme weather events. Example, the 2021 Chamoli flash flood following glacier collapse near hydropower sites. So whenever there is what? Cloud burst which happens in these locations, whenever there is what? A landslide, mass wasting, earth wasting. You might have seen the case of what? Dharali flash flood. So in the Dharali town, what happened is that people had done so much of amount of what? Infrastructural development in the catchment area of the river, and when there was a cloud burst, and associated with cloud burst there was what? There was mud flow which was coming. Everything got what? Vanished. So many people actually were trapped in those what? Debris. So this was the context. So this is the nature of contradiction that we find, that on one hand we try to what? Increase the infrastructure push in these areas, but on the other hand we are seeing that a disaster risk is not getting reduced, it is increasing instead. Further, weather risk assessment. So projects often bypass rigorous environmental and disaster impact assessments under the developmental pressure, and therefore the EIA is what? Weakened in the contemporary times. Now how we can manage? The most important thing that we say to students when we discuss the context of disaster management, or when we discussed basic things about becoming an IAS officer, is, and good IAS officer is one who can do what? Who can do at step one, the mapping of the district, the zoning of the district, that where are those hotspots of what? Communal violence, where are those hotspots of what? Hazard proneness. And therefore, again, while managing the contradiction, we have what? We should be having the first important thing is that risk sensitive land use planning should be done. What are the locations which are very sensitive, environmentally and ecologically fragile, and therefore we have to what? Zone them up. So zoning based upon what? Vulnerability mapping, also called as what? Vulnerability mapping matrix, should be there with us, so that required interventions can be taken. So land use planning, zoning based on environmental vulnerability what? Mapping before the project approval. Example, earthquake zoning we have in the Himalayan states. We also what? Recently introduced the new hazard zone mapping of what? The earthquake, which although the government, because of what? The push it was coming, they have taken it back. So that is the context. Good morning, Divya. Perfect. All the students who have what? Just joined, good morning. So that is the context. Then eco-sensitive engineering. Example, slope stabilization techniques. There can be what? There can be some anchoring rock material at the base of what? At the base of the slope. So all those slope stabilization techniques, then other hard engineering methods should be taken. Example, tunnel boring instead of what? Blasting, so that there is what? The hazard increment in these locations can be managed. Example, recommendations post what? Kedarnath disaster of 2013, which was also related with the background of what? A flash flood which happened in this location. Good morning. So these are what managing the different what contradictions. So we have what risk sensitive land use planning, eco sensitive engineering. Then we have what strengthened the EIA framework. The environmental impact assessment framework should be what strengthened. It should not become what a centralized tendency. It should include the realities from what bottom of the ground, and therefore the EIA should be standard. There should be what public discussions and public discourse should be taken properly. There should be proper time given in all the formats possible, in all the linguists possible in those local areas, so that the EIA can become more robust, comprehensive, and what more aligned with the environmental realities. Further, we have what institutional coordination. So all the different departments which are involved, be it what from the context of development, be it from the context of what disaster risk reduction, all should what sit together, and they should what give a coordinated and convergence based what federalism context. Further, we have what fifth is community based what DRR. So local knowledge should be involved in planning. The people of the area are well known what happens during the time of what a disaster or earthquake, what happens when there is a sudden catastrophic event which comes, and therefore local should be involved. And there is also a question this time we have, that is people's participation, and people's participation is the core of environmental policy and disaster management policies as well. So this is how we can what manage it properly. So you have all these pointers written with what, with their exemplifications, Further, since it's a 10 marker, we have given the introduction, we have given the contradictions, we have given the how it can be managed. Then we can what quickly come up with the conclusion and way forward. So you can what actually club both together, way forward and conclusion. So you can say that resilient infrastructure standards, as we are taking the context of what the coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure principles, in which India is a pioneer country, we can take advantages of them. And also the time has now come that we have to do what? We have to carry forward the various capacity or the carrying capacity studies and surveys in the Himalayan region, the ecologically sensitive areas beforehand. You can also talk about the Wayanad case study, the Wayanad landslide. You can also somewhere here briefly mention that a median path between the case of what Gadgil report on one hand and Kasturi Rangan report on other hand should be taken as soon as possible in the concluding lines of your answer. So it is a 10 marker. Don't forget to what make a map. Again, because it is showcasing the case of what a spatial understanding can be given only by making what the map of India. Next 10 marker question that we see is the context of what. So this question was also what covered in our what SRIJAN daily test that we were taking for specifically for mains 26 students. So it was what, it was question number 6, which was more or less on the same lines. The accelerating pace of infrastructure development in ecologically vulnerable regions such as Himalayas and coastal stretches has exposed the limitations of project specific environmental impact assessments. So this was connecting with the EIA context, but you could have used the same content here as well. Next, if we talk about, we have this as another 10 marker. Again, this question has made the paper of what environment ecology relatively what moderate level of difficulty. Why? Because you should be knowing some factual information here. What it is? Discuss the aim and goal of Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So this biodiversity framework came in what, the year 2022, and it was for the entire decade, that is between 2022 and 2030. This entire biodiversity framework would have been applicable or would be applicable. So discuss the aim and goal. So now this is what? This is factual. If you are not writing specific, you will not be awarded what much marks. Students generally prepare this Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework for prelims. And also it came in 2022, and therefore there has been a certain time lag also. But it is often advised and often said in the class that you should what? You should do one important thing, that things which are very, very important. See, this framework is applicable for a decade between 2020 and 2030. And if such a broad principle, broad framework is applicable and it is there with us, given by the global community, and also India is following it on a national level, we will see later that India has actually given more than 80,000 crore to actually what? Achieve the aims and goals of this particular what framework with respect to Indian settings. Therefore, we cannot afford to miss the aims and goals of this, because if such questions come again in the coming years, we have to be what? Prepare for them. The second part of the question says, so see, only 10 marker, but see how difficult they have made the paper by actually enhancing the length of the questions. So this is what? Discuss the aim and goals. It is not mention, it is discuss. And then they are saying that mention India's commitments and initiatives to achieve the goals and targets of this framework, giving suitable examples. How layered they are making the papers this time. How lengthy they are making it. In a 10 marker, they are giving discuss. In a 10 marker, they are giving aim and goal of this. In a 10 marker, they are giving mention India's commitment. And in a 10 marker, they are giving what? With suitable examples. That is, they are increasing the lengthiness, the layering of the questions. So a well-informative mind and a mind who has the capacity to write fast will be the one who will win in this particular what format of the examination that we are seeing right now. So we can start by just giving the what of this framework. We can actually introduce this framework itself in the introduction. So the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, KMGBF, adopted at what? Adopted at the Convention on what? Biological Diversity. That is the context of what? UNCBD, Conference of Party 15. So we know that this UNCBD COP actually meet what? Once in 2 years, and therefore it was during the COP 15 which happened in 2022. This was being finalized. Is what? Is a global agreement to halt and reverse the biodiversity loss, guided by the Mission 2030 and Vision 2050 for what? Living in harmony with nature. See, all the required keywords have been put together in the introduction itself. Again, since the question is asking aim, we will try to what? Use this same heading so that examiner will know that we are writing what has been asked. We are writing what has been asked. This is how a good answer writing should be. You should try to make the headings and take the keywords from the question itself. This is the first principle of what answer writing. So the aim is here to provide a strategic global roadmap to halt and reverse what? The biodiversity loss while ensuring the sustainable development. Again, a what affirmative assertive statement that we have used otherwise as well. So example, it guides what countries in updating their what? National biodiversity strategy and what? And action plan. So this is called as what? The national biodiversity strategy and action plan. And accordingly, India also what? Accordingly, India also what? Updated this NBSA app in the year 2024. Accordingly, India also what? Adopted it. Adopted it. Perfect. All those students who are watching, if you have some context, some doubt with which you can write this answer more better, you can also what? Comment in the chat box. Perfect. Sir, Marathi mein bataun? Not possible, beta. It is in English medium that we are taking these detailed discussions. So this is the context. So it actually, this framework guides, this framework is a model framework at the international level. And this model framework at the international level guides the individual countries to adopt and update their national biodiversity strategies and action plans. We will see what India has done in this regard. Further, if we come, so these are what? These are the different goals. Now this you should know to get what? More marks. So there were what? There were 4 long-term overarching goals, and beneath those 4 goals, there were what? 23 action-oriented targets for 2030. This you can afford to what? Miss. This you can afford to miss because there is no space, and the question is also not asking about the targets because they are what? They are many in number. But you should be remembering the case of what? 4 goals. The goal number 1 is halt human-induced species extinction. Example, protecting species like what? The critically endangered great Indian bustard. And you might be knowing that the great Indian bustard in the Desert National Park of India in Rajasthan, they are what? They are applying their level best to increase the population of what? Great Indian bustard in the wild. And you must have what? Heard that few months back there were what? 3-4 new what? Chicks of these what? These new born babies have been seen of what? The great Indian bustard. So you could have what? Written that as well. Goal B, ensure sustainable use of what? Biodiversity for human well-being. So there should be what? Regulation in what? The context of fisheries and forest resource usage. So all that should be there. Then we have what? Fair benefit and sharing. Of course, one important objective of what? The CBD at the national level and the UNCBD contextualizing in the context of Indian settings of, so the case of what? National Biodiversity Act 2002, all have what? This important goal, that is ABS mechanism. ABS mechanism. You must have what? Learned this. This you can never forget. That is access and benefit sharing. So whatever the genetic resources you are using or companies are using or MNCs are using of the tribal areas, of these resource rich areas, then if you are getting some benefit out of it, while you're accessing it, while you're getting benefit out of it, you have to share the benefit with the locals. And this was what called as fair benefit sharing from what genetic resources, including the case of digital sequence information. So every information regarding the access of those genetic resources should be put on what this DSI register that they have what recently launched in the recent COP that they have seen. Goal D is what? Mobilize adequate finance, capacity building and technology for what? Implementation of all these targets that we have seen. So these are the 4 goals. You should be remembering this. A person who do not know these goals might have what? Written less and will be getting less marks for sure. And one key target that out of these 23 target is 30 into 30, and this was very famous that you would have what studied with respect to your prelims as well. So conserve 30% of what land, waters and oceans, restore 30% of what degraded ecosystems by 2030. So everywhere it is what 30%, 30% and what by 2030 is the context. Now what are the Indian commitments that the question is asking? So the question is asking mention. Now here we have to what discuss. Here it is what mention. So here you have to what? Give the explanation part as well. Explanation part as well. But in the mention, only what? Only giving what will suffice. If you have less time and less space, only what can also what suffice. Suffice kar jayega what? So the context here is these are India's commitments. So India updated is what? National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan in 2024 and released it at what? COP, which happened in what? Kelly, Colombia, near Colombia in the South American region, aligning with the national action with what? KMGBF, that is the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. It aligned it what? The updated NBSA app. Now 23 national biodiversity what targets have been taken, which were developed by the context and philosophy of what? Whole of government, whole of society consultation across 23 what ministries. So it was an all inclusive and all the stakeholders were taken into account while forming these what? These updated targets. Then financing commitment, as I told you that under the national biodiversity strategy and action plan updated in what? 2014 and given at what? Released at the Kelly 2016 COP, there was what? There was total what? Project outlay was given of what? More than what? 81,664 crore per year in between the year for 2024 and 2030. So for the coming 6 years, this will be the budget outlay that the government of India has given on this particular front. Finally, India's initiative, as you know, you would have written what? You could have made a structured what? Diagram here as well. So you will be having what? You will be having 3-tier structure that you have. So on the context of what? National level, you have what? NBS, National Biodiversity Authority. So you have what? NBA, National Biodiversity Authority. Then you have what? At the state level, you have what? State Biodiversity Boards you have. And then at the local level, you have what? BMCs, that is Biological Management Committees. So you could have given the 3-tier structure by giving the diagram for it. And always have this feeling and philosophy in your mind, and whenever we have text to be written, and if that text can be converted into some type of a diagram, graph, map, etc., try to do that, because that is where you can attach but attract the attention of the examiner. Restoration initiatives like Namami Gange, then species conversion, Project Tiger, Project Elephant, then protected area expansion, expanding the network of what? Ramsar wetlands to boost the 30 into 30 target. Now we have 101 Ramsar sites in context of India. Then further we have what? The context of coastal and marine ecosystem and conservation. So mangrove initiatives for shoreline habitat and tangible incomes. So MISTI scheme should be what written here for mangrove examples. So this is all the examples that you have which the question is asking. And finally, we have what? Community-based conservation. So we have what? The joint forest management what committees, which actually include the forest officials on one hand and the tribal communities on the other hand, to actually what? To put a joint effort towards the conservation of what? These forests, which are reflective of our biodiversity of the country. So ye aap yahan par you could have given this specifically. Further, if we talk about, these were the 2 10 markers that we have, and now we have what? 2 15 markers. So roughly around 15, 15, 30 marks, and 2 10 markers, 20 marks, 50 marks of what environment disaster was there, which is huge in terms of what getting more marks in GS3. Third question that we have, the second last question that we have, what, see the question tag, what is it? It is asking, it is not asking the discussion, the explanation, the examination of it. What are the challenges to solid waste management in India? Then second part of the question is what, discuss the governmental policy framework on solid waste management. Discuss the success slash failure cases of what, of Delhi and Indore cities, highlighting the salient features of their solid waste management initiative. Again, see the layering. Not one, not two, rather not three. More than three questions are being loaded in a specific question. And therefore, it becomes difficult for the individual and aspirant to write in the examination hall and to complete the paper in time. But how you can complete it in time? When you will be what, very much aware of the question tags. See, here they are asking what, here they are asking what, discuss, here they are asking what, discuss, here they are asking what, highlighting. And we know that the success case studies of what, Indore, Bhopal, in context of what, Madhya Pradesh, in context of what, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, we all have what, heard. So relatively more successful was the case of what, the Indore model of what, cleanliness and disposal of the waste, and relatively what, less successful was the case of what, Delhi. So it will not be what, outrightly saying that Delhi has not seen any what improvement in the solid waste management practices, etc., etc. We will be giving what, relative successes and relative failures of these case studies of what, Delhi and Indore as well. So first of all, we can start with what, the solid waste management context. So India's rapid urbanization is the fundamental reason behind what we see in the form of increasing generation of solid waste. What is solid waste? It can be the domestic waste that is coming out of the households. It can be the construction demolition waste. It can be the industrial waste, etc., etc. So all these actually combine to become the solid waste in an urban setting. Has increased municipal solid waste generated, making scientific segregation, processing and disposal a critical for sustainable urban governance. Just after that, again, you could have what, drawn a map. So India map, and what you could have done in India map is, in the map of India, you could have given what, you could have given the hotspots of what, hotspots of solid waste generation. Solid waste generation, and what are the hotspots of solid waste generation? The metropolitan cities of India. So metropolitan cities of India. And you could have what, shown on the map of India the case of what, the case of your what, Delhi, Mumbai, Calcutta, Chennai, Bangalore. So you could have what, plotted them on the map, and the case of what, your mapping, your pictographical sense would have been what, done. Now, just after this, we can just mention the challenges. So challenges are what, why there is more solid waste management which is happening. Again, the core reason is urbanization. Again, in urbanization, the core reason is what, increasing materialistic what, cultures, increasing use and throw cultures, increasing the level of what, consumerism. So all these are important factors and are challenging the case of what, solid waste management in context of what, urban settings. So poor source segregation is there. Hardly we actually what, segregate the context of solid waste that we have generated in our what, households, and that is the case. Processing deficit is there. So processing machinery that we have in context of what, the local what, municipal bodies is very, very less. We don't have the required tools and techniques and equipments to do that. Then we have what, legacy waste. Legacy waste means the past waste, the ancient waste that we have, not the ancient from the ancient times, that is the past waste that we have. So you can go in Delhi at Bhalswa slum area, the Ghazipur landfill, you can see there are mounds of those what, garbage dumps can be seen. So they are what, they are legacy waste of the past year, of the previous decades that we have seen, especially after 2000s. So legacy waste example, Ghazipur landfill in Delhi. Weak urban local body capacity, especially in terms of what, funds, functionaries and what, functions as well. So 3F that we see. Then low citizen participation is there. Again, citizens are what, citizens do not have the authentic attitudes to take care of the locations they exist. Many migrant population are coming in these locations which are what, economic engines of growth, and the migrant populations are not having that connect with the surroundings, and therefore there is also what, more use and throw cultures and low citizen participation which you can see. And last is informal sector integration. Highly, this particular solid waste management, large amount of what, the labor which has been involved in this particular segregation and management is again what largely informal in nature. So this is the main challenge that we can write. Further, we can write the government policy framework on solid waste management. So these are written in your what pollution chapter of your environment book that we have given to you. Also, they are discussed in the classes. So what we can do is we can mention them. We can mention them. Here we can do what mention. And as we are coming more towards the present times, we can actually elaborate them. So you can see that we have what initially in 2000s we have municipal solid waste, which was the context, the first framework for collection, transportation and disposal of urban waste. This much you have to write. And as you are coming from 2000 till what 2016 and 21, you have to elaborate them slightly. You have to elaborate them slightly. Elaborate them slightly. So we have Swachh Bharat Mission urban component, because urban component is the most important component here, because that is where the solid waste management is the highest. You don't have to talk about the rural component. So focus on sanitation, door-to-door collection. See, door-to-door collection. Swachh Bharat ka irada kar liya humne. You might have listened that song. Collection and behavioral change. Very, very important behavioral change. I told you, perception, behavior, migrant population, how you see your surroundings, all this is something that matters while understanding the context of solid waste management. Then in 2016, for the first time, we actually given the case of solid waste management rules, which mandated source segregation to be the most important context. Then again, following the case of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, we have door-to-door collection and scientific disposal of this. Then in 2016 also, one of the most important component and most troublesome component is the case of the plastic waste generation under solid waste. And therefore, we come up with the plastic waste management rules as well in 2016. And therefore, here the context was it introduced extended producer responsibility to be attached with the generation of plastic components. And therefore, the firms, the units, the manufacturing bases which are actually involved in generation of the plastic waste should have the responsibility to tackle it many ways. And then we have the revamped and the rejuvenated Swachh Bharat Abhiyan Urban 2.0 component, which also came with strict guidelines that it focused on the garbage free cities, the legacy waste remediation, and circular economy that should be promoted under any circumstances. So that can be a context. So garbage free cities we want. We want the legacy waste to be to be neutralized as soon as possible via the various biological remediation techniques, etc., etc. Now we cannot miss what the question was also saying, highlighting the salient features of their solid waste management practice, the success and failures of them. So this is the context. We could have we could have talked about the context of government policy framework on solid waste management. So we could have given the case of waste to energy plants, legacy waste remediation efforts, digital monitoring, policy compliance mechanisms. And just after that, we'll be coming to third page of our answer, and we'll be giving the case of Delhi, failure cases and reasons. So overflowing landfills. So you can talk about Ghazipur, Bhalswa, Okhla continue to face legacy waste accumulation. Go and you will see the bigger solid waste mounds and mountains that have been formed there. Further, we have poor segregation. Mixed waste reduces recycling and processing inefficiency. Then processing gaps. Waste generation remains higher than the treatment capacity in the treatment plants that we have. Further, fragmented governance. Multiple agencies create different they work in their own silos, in their own compartments, and therefore there is coordination challenges that we can see. And lastly, we have citizen behavior gap. Don't forget to write this. This is again an important context. The perception of citizens, the attitude of citizens, the way they have emotional connect with the surroundings is something that actually keeps a city clean and neat. And therefore, limited compliance with segregation norms can be seen also from the part of the individuals, also from the part of also on the part of the general public. So that is the context. But on the case of Indore, we have more success can be showcased here, because there is a more formal and highly organized mechanism to actually do the solid waste management. So we have 100% door-to-door collection, which ensure complete waste collection coverage. So there is complete waste collection coverage is there with respect to 100% door-to-door collection in context of Indore. Then source segregation model, waste separated into wet, dry, sanitary and other categories. So very scientific and a very elaborative set of categories under which the segregation can be done. Then we have decentralized processing, composting plants, biomethanation units and material recovery facilities reduce the landfill dependency. So we have what decentralized processing, which was done so that the particular waste can be converted into some usable items. Example, biomethanation units and material recovery facilities and composting plants were used to convert them into some usable materials as well. Technology integration. So every door-to-door what collection unit or the particular truck, the mini truck they have has what a GPS based tracking of waste collection vehicles, improved what monitoring. So monitoring was what taken into account. Then citizen participation, again very important. Continuous awareness campaigns created what behavioral change, the perceptual change, the attitudinal shift that we have seen in the people of what Indore. And then legacy waste management, dump sites were scientifically remediated and what converted into what usable land. That is most important. That is most important. But however, there were certain what issues as well. So we can write that there are what operational costs are very high dependence on what administrative efficiency. So sometimes the administration which becomes weak in certain months of the year when there is no ranking pressure on them to what go in the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan ranking, and therefore they also become what slight lackadaisical, laxity is shown by them, and therefore the efficiency comes down. And these are the other aspects that we have. Scalability concerns, smaller cities may lack similar institutional what financial capacity which cannot be taken into other account. The conclusion is solid waste management succeeds when strong governance and active citizens work together on scientific processing as seen in what Indore compared to what Delhi. So we can give a slightly optimistic and slightly oriented conclusion where we are not actually sidelining the case of Delhi as well, but we are slightly appreciating the case of Indore because we have seen that Indore, it is highly managed, it is highly scientific way of what management of the solid waste which is generated. And this was also what covered in our environment booklet of Prahar. So on the page number 49 and 50, we have specifically mentioned solid waste management because it was also came as what earlier as a PYQ in 2018. There was this particular what flow chart that you could have used from this context. Then we have what the challenges in the solid waste management, the national initiatives for solid waste management. Then you could have what written something about the case of solid waste management rules, the case of what 4R principles through which you can actually conclude this answer as well. So this was the third answer. The last answer that we have, the last question that we have is this. Again, it is a 15 marker, 250 words, 3 pages are being given by UPSC. Again, a very beautiful question, yet simple to understand and simple to what analyze. The question says community participation. Without this, nothing can be done. We also say that community policing. Community policing is what an important initiative that police reform should undertake. Because community is what the eyes and ears of the already well established what policing system. In that same regard, why we are not taking the context of what community participation as a cornerstone of effective disaster management. Full stop. Analyze this statement with suitable examples from India. Also discuss the challenges to what community participation and measures to strengthen it. If community participation is there, people are well aware of their surroundings. They can actually highlight the problems at the first instance to the administration, and therefore the effective recovery, effective mitigation, effective response to any type of disaster can be given at the earliest. So disasters are inherently local. See, it is not the case that some type of landslide is coming in across all the stretch of what Western Ghats. It is highly localized. If it is coming in the case of what Wayanad district also, it is coming in a very specific localized region of what Wayanad. And therefore, disasters are inherently local. Hence, community participation bridges the gap between the case of what the state capacity to handle the case of what disaster and the last mile what resilience, where the locals, the community participation is required. So it is the core of what disaster management context. Now, community participation, we have to what showcase it as a cornerstone of what the effective disaster risk management, because whenever statement type of what, whenever in mains and in your options, whenever statement type of questions are there, it is your responsibility that you should what elaborate the statement logically in the first initial part of your question as well. Since it's a 15 marker, you have 3 pages to write. Why not to elaborate? Because the statements are given so that you can slightly elaborate them in your answers as well. So we'll be taking the keyword from here, that how community participation is a cornerstone of for what effective disaster management. So first is local knowledge. Take a residents identify hazards, vulnerability, households, and safe routes. safe routes of evacuation. They know the safe routes of evacuation much better and much earlier than the authorities from the disaster relief response. Example, Odisha village preparedness supports what cyclone evacuation in every what cyclonic time period of the Indian or southwest monsoon winds. First, then we have what the first response. So trained locals act before the external agencies can arrive. And therefore, it is those trained locals, example, the Aapda Mitra trains community first responders. And this is not only in context of India. Almost all the different parts of the world where the disaster management is tackled effectively, it is the first responder in the form of what the community participation is seen. Then early warning, local networks convert alerts into what timely action. Example, Noliashia and what Venka, Traipur in what Odisha achieved UNESCO IOC tsunami ready recognition through what? Through drills, evacuation plans, and what public awareness that is there. So they have been awarded recently as well. Again, this is all because of the community participation. Then inclusive relief participation improved for identification of what vulnerable groups and equitable assistance. Example, the Kudum Shri Women SHG supported relief distribution and post-flood sanitation, and they were also responsible for what? For providing relief during the time of what? COVID-19 pandemic. So Kudum Shri model was also what appreciated during the time of what? COVID-19 pandemic, and how that SHG can help in what supported relief distribution post-flood sanitation. Then we have what? Rapid recovery. Community ownership restores what? Livelihoods and what? Social networks, social capital. If in a particular society is high, that particular high social capital will always translate into what? Community participation as a cornerstone of what? Effective disaster management policy. And you will be surprised to know that there is a principle in environmental policy which we actually study, and that is called as participative principle. And participatory principle says that almost all the stakeholders should become and should be on the same level of what? Environmental policy or effective disaster management policy, so that they can give a united front in case of a disaster which comes here. So now, just after this, the question is asking, also discuss the challenges of what? Community participation. Why in certain parts of the country the community participation is less. It can be due to what? It can be due to the case of what? It can be due to less social capital, less awareness, less literacy, and what measures that we can take to actually elevate and strengthen it. So we can make a tabular presentation here in our answers as well. So this will be in the second page that you will be what? Writing here. So here we have challenges, here we have what? Measures. What are challenges? Capacity gaps. There is lack of training, equipment and protocols that have been what? Distributed to the locals in context of what? A disaster. Then social exclusion is there. Largely the people of a specific what? Caste and what community are doing it, and they're excluding the other parts of the society, and therefore there is what? Social exclusion on the case of caste, gender and economic inequalities. That means social capital is what? Is less in context of what? The Indian settings. And if social capital is less, the effectivity of the disaster management policy recovery will be weak. Then information gaps, because language diversity is there, connectivity is weak here, and there are what? Digital divides. Digital divides is there. So always remember in context of what? India, that there are three important divides: rural urban divide, digital divide, and what? The case of gender divide that exists. Then institutional fragmentation, weak coordination among community, panchayats, district and state agencies exist, and therefore the interdependency, the convergence is seen to be what? Shallow. And the volunteer fatigue, lack of incentives and equipments and institutional support is given to the volunteers who act as first responders in case of what? Disasters in a particular area, and therefore they will also become what? Disinterested if they are not properly incentivized after every what? Disaster. And therefore that is called as volunteer fatigue. Thak gaya. The volunteer has what? Fatigued out, has become what? Fatigued. Then measures, again local planning, integrate what? Village plans with what? Panchayat and district plans. So even at the division level, even at the decentralized level, we should what? Integrate the case of village plans with the district plans of what? Disaster management. Then skill building, institutionalized training, mock drills and first aid multiple times within a year. Then digital inclusion, combine technology with what? Community networks. Like we have seen an alert message which was being what? Started with the case of what? The Ministry of Earth Sciences. So that kind of context, the technology integration should be what? Given. Okay, unknown. Krish, that will be uploaded shortly. Today all will be uploaded. Inclusive governance, ensure women and vulnerable groups have what? Have their own defined roles. what they need to do in a case of what disaster hits, how they have to go for the evacuation plan, which type of the participation should be what taken care of, how the vulnerable groups should be evacuated first, like the case of old age, like the case of children's, like the case of what women's first. So there should be about inclusive governance. And then sustained support, provide equipment, insurance, and what finance and recognition in the post disaster recovery period. And conclusion, we can write that community participation thus converts disaster governance from a top-down response system, which was the case of earlier, reactive governance based for disaster management, into a locally owned resilient mechanism. And this should be the way forward. This should be the way forward. So currently we are in the disaster management paradigm, which should be aligned and which should be tilted towards locally owned resilience mechanism. This should be our philosophy. So this was the question number 4 that we have. Now you will be getting what other discussion of what science and tech by Manjeet sir. And these were the 4 questions which are roughly around 50 marks that would have been done. The questions, again I am telling you, they were largely easy to moderate category. Information is required. Please revise your base notes, class notes, and everything came from the class notes and the current affair compilations that we have. It is not a hyperbole that every teacher is coming and saying that the class notes. It is the reality that in relation to prelims, the paper of mains was relatively on the moderate level of difficulty. It was not tough. It was not very difficult. There could have been what easy management of what answers if you are writing the answers on daily basis and if you are what revising your class notes. With this, I am taking end of this particular what session of discussion on environment and disaster management question. The next faculty will be what taking care of the science and technology questions. Thank you and have a nice day.
Hello everyone. How are you guys? Hello. So the stream is going for 2 hours. You have already completed a couple of topics, environment, economy, and now we will complete our science and tech part. So this year you got 3 questions in science and technology. First of all, let's discuss where you got those 3 questions from. Okay? One was based on agentic AI, right? Most of you must have read about agentic AI because it is in news. And the other two things were currently in news, right? One event happened on April of 6, 2026 itself, right? Where we got the commercial criticality, okay? Commercial scale criticality for prototype fast breeder reactor. And the second one was launch of a satellite by one of India's startup, right? Which happened on May of 6th. So both were in news and they have asked you what are the significance of these events and how these will help India in future, right? So there are 3 questions. We have to go through those. First of all, I hope all of you are doing good, right? Most of you who have given your mains this year, I hope your papers went well. And now let's discuss the 3 questions that we got from science and technology. First, we will discuss the fast breeder reactor, then we will go to the Drishti satellite, and then the last one is agentic AI. So first, let's see the questions. So this year we got 3 questions. One more question was there, right? Biotechnology in agriculture, that some part overlaps with the science and technology part there also, right? You can mention the GM crops, which is one of the technology to use different genes from different areas to give major improvements to the plant. Suppose BT cotton is there, right? We are only using in India BT cotton. Rest of the things are still, some are banned, right? Some are under the Supreme Court's ruling that they will decide on DMH 11, right? So you can use those things as well. One sec. Done. So the first question was, distinguish between the fast breeder reactor and the thermal nuclear reactor in the context of the first indigenously developed prototype fast breeder reactor. Commercial scale criticality we have achieved. There are only 2 countries which have this now, Russia and India. Commercial scale criticality of the fast breeder reactor, right? Kalpakam, explain the term criticality. What do you mean by criticality? First of all, let me tell you, criticality is not equal to electricity. At this moment, we have just proved that the physics works, right? We have not started using it to generate the electricity. Many people think that when criticality is achieved, we start producing the electricity. Those things happens in stages, right? So criticality we will discuss, and what are the implications for the clean energy future of our country. So first of all, you need to tell them that what this is, right? So prototype fast breeder reactor. What is the difference between the thermal reactor and the prototype reactor? You need to understand first of all the fuel we use in nuclear reactors, right? India has 2% of world's uranium and we have 25% of the thorium, but most of it is fertile fuel, right? Most of it is fertile fuel. We can't use this fertile fuel directly. We have to use fissile fuel, right? Now, what is this fissile fuel? You have uranium. You have uranium 235 also, which is less in number, and you have uranium 238, and you have thorium, which is 232. Now, in the first part, you use this as your fuel and you can generate only 1%. You use only 1% to get to the energy. Rest of it is waste for you. In the second nuclear stage, right, Indian nuclear program has 3 stages. First is thermal reactor, second is the fast breeder reactor, and third, we will use the thorium because we have so much of reserves of thorium. We couldn't get to 25% fuel if we don't pass this bridge stage, which is the stage 2. So first let's understand what is the difference between the first stage and the second stage, which they have asked, and then we will go to the implication part, right? We have these things. You can convert this fertile fuel to plutonium 239 and you can convert this thorium to, not yet in principle, right? You can convert this to uranium 233. Now how to do it, right? In the thermal reactor you use this, out of which you do fission of uranium 235 to some level and then you convert some of uranium 238 to the plutonium 239, which will you use in the second stage, right? In the second stage, in the first stage, there are some differences in the process itself. Let's first go through the differences, right? And what are the meaning of these things? In fast breeder reactor, as the name suggests, you use fast neutrons, and in the thermal reactor you use slow neutrons. Why is this happening, right? This is the difference that you need to understand. Here the fuel mainly is, this is the thing that we can use for fission, and this is very low in concentration, right? We mostly have uranium 238. Enrichment say we can get to 3%, 4%, 5%, which we can use as fuel, but uranium 235 will be very less. You have neutrons, right? If you pass the neutrons at speed, there are chances that you will miss getting to this uranium 235, and we can't afford it. Why? Because the percentage itself of the fuel useful is very low, and we can't afford the fast neutrons just passing through the material without converting it to energy, right? We want finally energy, we want fission. So we don't do this, we use moderators. Moderators are present in this to slow down the neutrons, because we want more and more neutrons to get to uranium 235, so that we can get the fission. But that is not the requirement in fast breeder reactor, right? We have one thing we will do here is fission, and another thing we will get is plutonium 239 when the neutron gets added to this. We will use this in the second stage. In the second stage, you use mixed oxide of uranium oxide and plutonium oxide as the fuel, and you want more and more neutron getting to this fuel of ours, right? Here we don't want it to be slower. We don't want slow neutrons. We want fast neutron, so that in the fission in the fission of the plutonium 239, we can get one neutron can lead to at least two or three neutrons you can get. Now we won't use all the 3 neutrons to do fusion. Fission. We can use one for fission. We can use one for making the fuel. This is what we are trying to do in fast breeder reactor, right? You are trying to do 2 things. First, extraction of energy, and second, you are trying to make the fuel, right? Again, you are trying to convert the uranium. So basically the reactor will be something like this. The extra neutron will be used. This is the breeder blanket. We will use the extra fast electron. This is uranium 238. We will try to use the extra electrons to convert uranium 238 to plutonium 239. So basically we are doing fission also. Along with fission, we are trying to make the fuel which is fissile, right? So basically India's situation is, you can see one analogy because of which you can understand this. So basically cash and fixed deposit. Cash is the fissile material that you use for fission, right? And fixed deposit is this uranium and thorium that you have. But you can't use thorium directly, right? You have to convert it to the fissile material. And this fast breeder reactor acts as the bank which will take one fee, that is the neutron, and it will convert the fixed deposit that you have into cash, right? You are converting the fertile fuel to fissile fuel which we can use in the next time. So suppose at present what we are trying to do is, what we have done is we have converted, first of all we have achieved criticality, and in the fast breeder reactor we will try to convert uranium 238 to plutonium 239. Similarly, by changing the breeder blanket, we can use this same process to convert thorium reserves which we have plenty of to uranium 233, which will be a fissile material. So this is the main thing here, because we want to get to a situation where we can use this thorium. We are doing everything regarding this, right? So what are the differences? First thing they ask you the differences. Here we use moderator because we don't need to slow down the neutron so that it can get to the uranium 235. Here we don't want to slow down the neutrons, right? We have already enriched. The fuel is 20%, 30% enriched. We will use 20%, 30% of plutonium, right? So we don't have to restrict the speed of the neutrons. We will use the neutrons to create more neutrons. One neutron can be used to get the criticality, right? So that the chain reaction gets maintained, and the extra neutrons can be used to make the fuel itself in the breeder blanket. Okay, so these are the changes. Breeds more fissile fuel, primarily use fissile fuel to sustain mission and produce energy. Hi Mamta, how are you? Hello Diya, sorry. Hello Shraddha. Hello Nitesh. Hello Vrishash Shukla, right? Viran Shukla. Hello. So these are the differences. Okay, I hope you have understood what is fast breeder reactor and what is thermal reactor. Both the places we are using different fuels. The advantages are, what are the implications? First of all, going ahead, we can use the thorium reserves if we master this, right? We have not got to a situation where we will use the second stage to electricity. We are going to do it in the future, near future. Third stage, we can try to use this blanket to convert the thorium that we have to the fissile fuel that we can use in the process of fission, by which we can get to electricity, right? So going ahead, this is one of the implications. Second, in the thermal reactor, you were using only 1% of the energy, right? Fast breeder reactor mein what you are doing is you are creating the fuel as well, right? You are creating the fissile fuel for the next process. So effectively in multiple cycles by using this, right, you can extract 60 to 70% of the energy, right? So that's a big jump. Also because of the low carbon base load, right, it will be along with your renewable sources of energy, and this can help us in getting the climate situation to a good place. So these are the implications, right? I have discussed what the differences are. Let's now see the second part of the question, right? Meaning of criticality, I have already told you. Criticality is not that something is dangerous, and criticality is also not that it is now generating electricity. What is criticality? What is criticality? A condition where the nuclear chain reaction becomes self-sufficient and controlled, right? Also, one more concept related to this is breeder fuel breeding ratio. Fuel breeding ratio. What we have achieved is 1.05. That means for every one atom that we use as fuel, we produce 1.05 of the new fuel. We are not creating energy. This is something like you are burning wood and you have wet wood alongside, right? You are using this energy to dry the other wood, which you can use later, right? You are not creating energy. You are not creating a new tree. You are just changing the form of the atom so that now you can use it to generate electricity and power, right? There is a difference. You are not creating energy here. You are changing the fuel such that now you can use it in the further processes. There is a difference. People think now we are creating the fuel itself. No, you are changing the form which you can use later. Okay, there is a big difference between the two. Understood? Next, so criticality is where we have, suppose, fast running neutrons. One neutron can lead you to 3 neutrons. One can be used to maintain the reaction, chain reaction. One fission, one neutron from one fission will lead to one more fission, one more fission, one more fission. So you are not subcritical where the chain reaction will die down. You are not supercritical where you will get everything out of your control. Criticality is one fission leading to one more fission, right? Where do we use the extra neutrons that we have? We use it to convert the fuel, right? Breeder blanket may we use it to convert the fertile fuel to fissile fuel. That is the main reason why we are trying to use the fast neutrons in the fast breeder reactor, and the breeder is for the fuel itself. Okay, so controlled at criticality, each fission on the average produces one neutron causing another fission. Okay, maintaining a steady reaction, that is criticality. Okay, so this is prototype fast breeder reactor. Okay, don't think pressurized heavy water reactor ke saath this is pressurized. This is not pressurized, right? Prototype. Significance is demonstrates India's capability in advanced fast breeder reactor technology to support the transition to the next stage, okay, of the nuclear program, where we can use thorium. From this stage, we can convert the thorium 232 to uranium 233, and we can use this as the final fuel. And how much of the world's thorium we have? 25% of world's thorium is with us. So this is important because going ahead we can use it. Hi Virendra, how are you? I'm good. I hope you are also good. Doing well? Chalo. Done. So this I have already discussed. First may you use this. Use uranium 235 to do the fission. Okay, and converting this to the fuel. Second may more using this you produce more of plutonium 235 by converting U238 as the blanket, breeder blanket. What you want to do going ahead is you want to use thorium 232 and convert it to uranium 233 because we have reserves, but we don't have the technology yet to change it to uranium 233, which is a fissile fuel, right? So going ahead we will do it. What are the implications? Criticality is achieved, self-sustaining chain reaction we have achieved. This is low carbon base load, clean energy fuel, plus initially 1% energy use, okay, in this process. Now you are going to 60 to 70, not in a single cycle, will multiple cycle may energy can be extracted up to this much from the fuel itself. Okay, so that's why it is important. Done. Now what are the main implications? What are the problems? The problem mainly is with the coolant, right? We are using sodium liquid here, right? Sodium liquid can react with air, right? Burn in air and vigorously can react with water. What is the use of this nuclear plant? In the end, you have to make electricity, right? Somewhere you have to transfer the energy from the sodium coolant, right, to the water to convert it to steam, and then steam will be used to run the turbines and you will get electricity. But if the sodium reacts so vigorously with the water, you cannot have both in contact. Also, sodium coolant in the reactor can become radioactive. You can't directly get the radioactive material, sodium coolant, directly in contact with water. So you transfer the energy in two layers, right? You have one sodium coolant, okay? One sodium coolant pass on the energy which can be radioactive. You pass it to the second layer of sodium coolant, which is not radioactive, and you will use this to transfer the energy to the water. We don't want a situation where a leakage can happen and this water can get in contact with this radioactive sodium coolant, right? So we will use one additional layer here to protect or make a gap between the water and the radioactive sodium coolant here. Okay, so this is one of the problems. What are the implications? Converts fertile uranium to fissile plutonium-235, enhancing the fuel utilization. Thorium pathway, I have already talked about this, enable eventual transfer of this thorium-232 to uranium-233, which we can use. Okay, low carbon base load provides reliable power alongside our renewable sources and energy security. Going ahead, right, if we can use the thorium reserves, again and again I'm saying 25%, right, it will be used for India, right? Everything. Why are we doing bioethanol and these blendings, right? Because fuel bill is high. We want to decrease it. This can be one way where we can, if we can use in future thorium properly, then we can reduce the fuel bill. The problem is with the sodium coolant, requires safety management, high cost, right? The technology is costly. We took 20 years to develop it, right? It was, the target year was 2010. We have achieved it in 2026. So we took so much of time to reach here, right? Waste, as happen with every radioactive fuel, right? You have to properly maintain, right, and safe disposal of the remaining fuel. Long gestation. Nuclear projects are often long. We have taken time to develop the fast breeder reactor. We should not take more time to get to a situation where we are using it commercially to produce electricity. Okay, done. So this was the first question. What was the difference? What are the implications? What are the challenges with it? And okay, fast breeder reactor, critically not merely a reactor milestone but a strategic bridge towards the energy security, thorium utilization and reliable low carbon energy going ahead. Okay, so in mains wala you got this question, right? Inauguration of the indigenous prototype fast breeder reactor has been celebrated as a historic milestone. Here also the importance was asked to you, right? India's nuclear power program. Discuss the significance of this development for India's nuclear program along with Dr. Homi J. Bhabha contribution in India's nuclear program. So this you could have found in the mains wala book. Okay. Similarly, in Prahar Science and Technology, this was directly given in detail. What has happened? What are the changes between the reactors? What are the differences? Right. Similarly, Prahar mein Science and Technology mein, alternate energy technology mein, they have discussed everything. So if you have followed these resources, you could have answered the question properly. Next one was on a tougher side, right? Next one was specific, that you had to know about the Drishti mission directly, what is done, who is producing the satellite, what are the functions, because what they have asked is, mention the salient features of mission Drishti. First of all, if you know remote sensing, you could have attempted the first part properly, right? But the second part is important. Discuss the imaging technique used in the satellite launched on 3rd of May 2026 under this mission. Why it is being considered the world's first satellite of its kind. Now you have to differentiate between the different satellites which are used for remote sensing and what is different in this one. Now for that you need to know some specification, how it is working. Basically, you can take pictures and see what is beneath, right? Or you can send some waves and read the echoes, and you can do imaging by both method. Initially what used to happen was both the thing used to happen on different satellites, and then they used to superimpose both the things and try to make sense of the information. The problem with that is that both the satellites are moving over a position at different times. The situations can change, the light conditions can change, and you can get different results. For the first time, we have a satellite which can do both things with good resolution, right? And how can they do it? That is the main question asking, right? The question is trying to ask you what they have done differently, which is letting them use this technology to get better resolution and do proper remote sensing, right? So first, Mission Drishti represents a new generation of Earth's observation technology aimed at enhancing India's remote sensing capabilities through advanced imaging techniques. They have used multispectral along with SAR. Can someone tell me what is SAR? Synthetic aperture radar. So they have used radar also, and they have used multispectral optical imager also. Now why do we need this, right? Both have some advantages and both have some disadvantages. You, by optical imager, you can directly see what the thing is. The other disadvantages with this is you can't use this in bad light, right? You can't use this when you have cloud cover, bad weather, right? So you have to use something where you can track the situation on the ground when the situation is difficult itself, right? Hi Pankaj, how are you? Suppose there is bad weather, right? There are clouds, right? There is the night situation, and you want to see the flood condition beneath, right? How would you do it? You can't use this because this requires light, because this is passive sensing. Mainly these are passive sensing. You also need active sensing. What is active sensing? You will use some source and then you will sense the reflections or the echoes. The problem with radar is the advantage is it can work in bad weather also, through the cloud also, because the waves won't diffract due to the small particles of the water in the clouds, right? But the problem with this is this can tell you multiple things in same image, right? It can interpret the flood water along with the wet road, right? Everything in, suppose everything will look dark, right? If there are brighter things, you will look at bright, but reading of radar images is difficult. If you have the penetration that the radar has, and if you have the clarity that the multispectral optical imager can have, and you can combine both the things on one satellite, and you can superimpose the information and look at the situation down, right? That can give you an advantage over the other things. This is the different thing that this satellite has done, that it has both. It can give you clear images. Also, similarly, it can give you imaging when the situation is bad, the weather is bad, in dark situation. So it uses both passive and active sensing, and because of it, you can club both of these things and you can get proper information. Another thing, synthetic aperture radar. The problem with radar imaging is, for getting high resolution image, what you need is a big aperture, okay, of the satellite to collect the information from beneath, a narrow beam, a narrow focus vision, right? So that you get sharper images. The problem is you can't take a kilometer long aperture in the space itself, है you can't you don't have those launch vehicles which can take such huge apertures from the ground to those space stations or orbits, right? What you can do is, you can, suppose, let me give you an example. Suppose you are moving in a train, and you continuously look at a tree, right? Suppose you take one image at this place, one image at this place. Now again you have moved here, you have taken again one more image of the same thing, same tree. Again you have moved ahead, you are again making one image, and later what will you do? Because you have taken images from different angles, you will superimpose everything in one go, right? the aperture is small, but synthetically what you have done is by assembling everything, the assembly of the information you have taken in multiple point of times in one picture, you will get better resolution. The resolution can go up from a height of 500 kilometers. From a height of 500 kilometers, the resolution can go up to lowest of 0.9 meters. Okay. Similarly, at the same time, you can do imaging of a large area also. So coverage is also one of the important thing. Coverage of larger areas, and second, resolution is also good because of both the, you are using good of both the things. For clarity, this, for detecting this, because you are using both of these, you can have good results, right? And both are at the same satellite at the same point of time. You are not using one satellite which is giving you the radar imaging and one satellite which is giving you the optical imaging, right? You have both the setups at the one place. So this is the advantage. Okay. Why do we use these things? Remote sensing. So basically our eyes can't see the change in color, right, or slight changes in the crop, right? But these 7 different specters, 7 bends can detect the changes from 500 kilometers in a very easy way. ठीक है सर, आप बता दो, क्लास 11th वाले देख सकते हैं, पंकज बैठो सुनो, है ना? It will help you, at least you will know how the questions are asked in mains. ठीक है, sit through the lecture, try to understand whatever you can, right? It can help you later. So first thing was salient features. What are the features? First, indigenously fuses synthetic aperture radar with multispectral optical imaging, right? Optosar. First time this has been done on a satellite effectively. All weather, because we have radar, we can track everything throughout the day or any weather situation. High resolution data, it can go from sub-meter, here it is written 1.2, it can go from 0.9 to 3.6. There are different modes. Okay, synthetic aperture radar ke there are different modes. This is just a second. One mode is strip map, right? And another is spotlight. This can swath an area of 30 kilometers with a resolution of 3.6. Another spotlight, right? A resolution of 0.9 meter. You can specifically focus on an area and get a better resolution, and similarly you can cover a larger area. Both can be done from this thing. Okay, and that's why we have an advantage by using this. Long term mein, this will help India a lot, right? Indigenously private milestone built by startup Galaxy IIT Madras graduates. Okay, nowadays these startups, we have 400 plus startups working in space technology, right? You must have heard of Skyroot. That was also one of the important things which recently happened. So you should track it for your prelims. Whoever is going to give their prelims in 27 or the mains, right? You should track these things which are the development done by the Indian companies, startup companies. ISRO is delegating some works to these companies. What are they developing? What are the achievements they have, right? You should understand what is the launch vehicle they have developed and got something to the orbit now. Okay, these things are really important. Multi-sectoral, so basically marine observation is there, right? Crop observation is there. Multiple things can be done by remote sensing. So these are common things. What was different, I have discussed that both the things are clubbed at one place. So basically this is made up of multispectral imaging, synthetic aperture radar. I have discussed that imaging uses microwave signals to capture images irrespective of cloud cover and darkness, so that you can get effective information for further use. High resolution optical imaging provide details visual image on Earth's surface, can be used for mapping, infrastructure planning, land use monitoring, crop observation, crop pattern observation. Then it can be used for shallow water observation and these things. Okay, understood? So why consider first of its kind? I have told you first of its kind because it have both the capabilities on the same payload, right? So integrated image capability is one of the things, enhanced data precision because of the high resolutions, and multi-domain utility. This can be used in multiple areas, all weather observation because of the radar system on place. Okay, right? So mission Drishti makes a shift from conventional remote sensing towards integrated high precision method to get proper imaging. Understood? Earth observation strengthening India's space capabilities and data driven governance. So if you use this, okay, the main thing is you should tell them specifically. They have asked, this is not a common question. What they have asked is, this satellite was launched, why it's being considered the world's first satellite of its kind? Because it has something which was not done before this. Okay, right? Sir, my wish is to become like, why not first become the officer and then become an officer like him, right? Done. Okay. The next question was easy because this is in news and you must have covered it before going to the exam. Then what is agentic artificial intelligence? Explain its working, describe the applications. First of all, the working, you should discuss the loop in which agentic AI works. Suitable examples, the fields where these can be used, and discuss the advantages. What are the advantages we have, risk and challenges associated with agentic AI. So they have given you 5 points to answer, right? 250 words, 50, 50, 50. You could have divided these into 5 sections and you could have answered, right? Understood? So what is agentic AI? I always try to explain science things with analogies, right? Because you can remember those things. Suppose I give you a recipe, right? And I give you the recipe and the ingredients and tell you to make the recipe. I have told you to specifically follow the instructions. This is generative AI. You will do what? You will analyze the ingredients. You will try to make it. If some ingredient is missing, you can't make the whole thing, right? You can't make the dish. Now consider another person, which is a cook. You have not told him anything. You have told him that tonight 8 p.m. you want him to make dinner for 6 people. Now it is for him to plan everything, right? It is for him to plan what are the tasks he has to do, what are the ingredients that he has to get, what is the dishes that he will make, and what are the time at which he will deliver. Everything is done by the cook itself, right? That is the difference between generative AI and agentic AI. It is not. People think that agentic AI is higher version, right? Suppose in a room, you know everything, you have wisdom, you have knowledge, you are sitting, you don't have any capabilities. The outer person can ask you the question and inside from the room you can answer, right? So basically you can't do any task. What you can do is based on your knowledge, you can reply to the other person. This is generative AI. What is agentic AI? You are sitting in the room, you have the same knowledge about everything. Now I will give you computer, I will give you different Wi-Fi, I will give you internet, I will give you notes, I will give you tools by using which you can do task. Now I will ask you the same thing. I will give you a task. You will divide that task into subtask. Because you have tools, you will use those tools, right? And then you will execute what I want. This is agentic AI, that you can perform tasks based on the information that you get initially, that this is your goal. You can go to the goal, analyze the goal, have you achieved the goal, again go to the planning, same thing can repeat, and you can improve over a period of time. But there are guardrails, right? What you can do and what you can't do, right? Suppose some permissions are given that you can go out of the room through the gate for 2 minutes and you then have to come back. You are not free to do anything or roam around, right? So these restrictions can be put around agentic AI because there are safety concerns also. Okay, understood? So this analogy you can use to understand what is the difference between generative AI and agentic AI. Don't think it is a higher version of the same thing. Different thing is, one is just try to give this, you will ask some question to the generative AI, it will give you the detailed answer and then that's it. It won't do anything further. What is agentive AI? It will try to perform the goal that you have given it. Again, try to analyze everything, and if the goal is not achieved, it will try to plan everything again and try to achieve the goal itself. Task-based things are done by agentic AI. Right? So refers to AI system capable of autonomous pursuing goals by perceiving. What is perceive? You will give it a goal. Or the environment around it, right? He will perceive what we have to do. He has to do the reasoning, planning, execution, action, and it also have a feedback mechanism, right? Minimal human intervention is required to complete the goal. Unlike conventional AI, it acts as an autonomous decision-making agent rather than only generating response for you, right? So nowadays you can use these for coding. Suppose Claude, maybe you can make agents for that, for daily purposes, routine works, right? So suppose you want to write a mail. The first thing, generative AI can give you the mail. Agentic AI can write the mail, send the mail, get the reply to the reply, and do the multiple tasks. You just have to tell him that take care of my mails. If something important appears, let me take the decision, and for the rest of common mails, you can reply to them, right? But you need to specify what his boundary is or are, right? You can't say, okay, just go and do this, right? You can't leave it, right? Human oversight are required, right? So because they don't know what are human values and what are human goals, they can do different things which were not intended. So there are problems with this also. Let's see what the technology is, and then we will go to the problems as well. So meaning of working of agentic AI is goal interpretation. First of all, it will interpret what the goal is, try to know what the functions that he need to perform, what are the tools that are required to get this goal. Perception and data collection. Data collection can be from short or long memory, right? When you chat with the bot, right? ठीक है, तो वहां पे you are training it over a period of time on the information that you have. Information from database, sensors, APIs, and digital environments. So what is the loop in which agentic AI works? First, user goal or environment input, then perception and reasoning. He will try to make sense of it and into subtask. Divide the task into subtask, small task. Try to retrieve anything it has from its memory to solve this goal or achieve this goal. Select tools and sequence. It can be based on the past memory, your past interactions. Tools for execution, the goal itself. After that, reflection and feedback. If the goal is not achieved, it will go to the planning phase. Again, it will try to get to the goal, right? It can repeat these things on its own, and it will keep on improving in doing the task that you give it. This is agentic AI. Okay, done. Hello, what's your name? Duggal ji. Hello, how are you? So reasoning and planning and tool execution and feedback. So this is what you could have written. What is the main cycle? Perceive, reason, plan, act, evaluate, and improve in the next cycle until it performs or completely gets to the goal. And goals can be repetitive. Suppose you are going to reply to mails, है ना? So वहाँ पे you reply to mail, again you get a mail, you reply to mail. This is just a small example. Healthcare में you do it. Diagnostic results can be analyzed, right? Disease can be analyzed quickly. So speeding up of these things can be done by agentic AI. Diagnostic, treatment, planning, and patient monitoring. But one thing is very important here. Human oversight is important. It is not at a stage where you can directly leave it to the agentic AI only. The doctor, after the diagnosis and the result from the agentic AI, has to take the decision whether to give some sort of medicines to the patient or not, right? So there needs to be some safeguards with these technologies. Scientific research, accelerate experimental and discovery of different things. Biotechnology mein this is happening, right? Business and finance automates complex workflows and decision making. So these things can be done quicker and efficient way by using the agentic AIs. Education में AI tutors, cyber security में we can try to use these to find out the loopholes and correct those so that we are less vulnerable. Advantages, all of you know higher productivity, personalization you can do for the task that you have to do on a daily basis, innovation can be done or accelerated innovation can be done using these AI tools, and decision support, right? And disadvantages, one of the, because most of these things agentic AI are used for the first employment opportunity, daily tasks, repeated tasks which can be done by these agentic AIs. So employment will be one problem. Okay, just starting freshers will find it difficult to get jobs. Why? Because the fresher jobs are repetitive most of the time. Training jobs, those can be replaced by these agentic AIs. So let's see what are the challenges regarding this. Okay, risk associated. So risk are unintended actions, because you have given the go ahead to the agentic AI to go and read and do different tasks. Suppose it reads some command going through the material which changes the way it acts, right? So manipulation can be done if the agentic AI itself gets trained on material which is trying to make harmful products. So it can be there, right? Disadvantages सर इसका, ये कभी गलत डेटा भी दे, yes गलत डेटा भी देता है पंकज, it can give you wrong data, it can give you biased data, biased decision. We are not talking about generative AI that you have trained, suppose you have trained it on biased material, right? It can give you biased information. Here it can take biased decisions, because if you have trained it on biased material, now you have the capability to take biased decisions, right? Suppose which can go against your human values. You don't know how it will affect. Okay, so this is one of problem. Security misuse. You can use these to generate phishing mail. Suppose someone, so every technology have advantages and disadvantages. People can use it in a good way for doing their researches, doing their daily tasks, right? But people will be there, which will try to use these to do harm to other people. So this is one of the issue. Privacy threats, because you are allowing these agentic AIs to do your daily task or multiple tasks, you have to allow them to use your personal information, right? Those can be leaked or misused. Suppose you are letting it use your photos, letting it use your contacts, letting it use your emails, right? So it can read and go through the information that you have, that can be used against you later, right? So you have to have proper safeguards regarding the privacy as well. What are the challenges? AI alignment with the human goals and values. This is one of the challenge, right? It only takes decision on the information it has. It doesn't know what we want specifically, right? Explainability, who will take this decision, why it took some decision, that explainability is missing. Accountability, who will be accountable if some wrong decision is taken? The person who developed it, the AI agent, or the company who has made the product? Who will be liable for the decision they take, right? So India mein abhi tak we have clubbed this responsibility with the person who is using it, right? Regulations are needed to effectively use this technology going ahead. These are the challenges, and human always abhi to needed. This is needed. So agentic AI represent a form, right? AI as a tool, AI as an autonomous collaborator. Its potential can be realized through human oversight. First of all, this is required ethical safeguards, so that we know these are the guardrails which this agentic AI cannot pass or do harm to others, and robust regulatory framework is needed so that we can control it effectively, so that people don't use it to cause harm. Okay, got it? So these were your 3 questions from science and technology, mainly based on current affairs. In the classes also, I keep on telling students this, that you can't think that you can become a scientist, you can't become an engineer and a doctor at the same point, right? Don't try to cover the science part completely book by book by book. Do it other way around. Okay? Try to understand what is in the news in the last 18 months. Based on the current affairs, go and read the technology behind it. You have to have some basic technology terms, right? You need to know some basic concepts. Suppose nuclear technology में you should know what is the 3-stage program we have. What is the first stage? What is the second stage? Why is the second stage is called the bridge between the first and the third, where we can use the thorium as well. Okay? So I hope this session was helpful. Next you will have internal security. Okay? So this question was given in your simulator test, question 15, where they have already asked what do you understand by generative artificial intelligence and how does it fundamentally differ from traditional predictive AI? Discuss its transformation application in education and governance. So next is internal security. I hope you have understood how you could have approached these 3 questions. First one was 150. There were 3 dimensions you could have gone into. What was the differences? What are the advantages, implications, and what is the conclusion in the end of the technology that we have developed, right? And second, you had to have some specific information about the Drishti mission, right? Other than that, you couldn't have answered it. So that was on the difficult side. And last question was easy. Everyone nowadays understand these LLMs, these models, agentic AIs. You read these on a daily basis. So I hope you have understood everything. I'll see you all soon. Have a great time. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to PW OnlyIAS English YouTube channel, and we are here with the last segment of our GS Paper 3 discussion, which is internal security. So, please confirm whether the audio and video is clear. All right, people. So when it comes to internal security, one thing which is there, which is missing from most of your life as well as in UPSC's life, is what? Consistency. We look at the questions here again, the number of questions, if you see, it's always been consistently 4. And if the topics also, if you see, it is not that, "Arey, ye pooch liya aapne." No, even that shock element is not there when it comes to internal security. Getting the point here. So, let us take it up with the very first question. Explain how fake news and disinformation pose a threat to internal security and public order in the Indian context. In this regard, discuss the salient features of amendments in respect of the IT Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code Rules 2021. Now, most of you may think, okay, they are asking something from 2021, etc. This is how people generally think, that there is this whole panic mode, etc. The question is but very, very simple. Question is asking, how can fake news and disinformation cause serious internal security as well as public order problems in the Indian context? So, it's a understood thing that you start your answer with what? What do you mean by fake news? What do you mean by disinformation? Correct? Information which is unverified as well as news which is fake. Simple. Keep the definitions very, very simple. Then this explanation part is there. Explanation part is what is really matter. See, fake news ka definition, or even for that matter disinformation's definition, that is not what the question is really asking. The question is asking, please explain it. So explain means what? You will have to give examples. That's the most important thing. So at least 1 or 2 examples you should give. So 1 or 2 examples, if I am talking about the recent memory, when we say, obviously the fake news that was there or the disinformation what was there with regard to Operation Sindoor. That is why we keep telling, we won the battle. Operation Sindoor, we won the battle, but Pakistan won the propaganda war. Rafale jets, Indian soldiers got killed, this, that, etc. Multiple disinformation was there, which even made the opposition to believe it. Got the point? That is your example there. That is done. If you want, you can give further examples also. Like the issue what took place, I think, in Northeast, where, this thing got started getting circulated in WhatsApp that there is this group. There is this group who are actually abducting children. Child snatchers are there. And 20 people got killed. It was a fake news. So that also, if you want, you can give. But again, like I have told you n number of times, you should always see two things here. 10 marks. 2 pages max to max. Got the point? Thank you, Akshay Kiran, for reminding. Happy Onam, everyone. Today is Onam, a festival that is celebrated in the state of Kerala. So happy Onam, everybody. So that is the first half of the question. You explained what it is with an example. Always understand this. Whenever UPSC asks something called explain, you validate it with data. You validate it with proper concrete example. Very, very important. Clear? Now comes the second half of the answer. In this regard, discuss the salient features of amendments in respect of the IT Act, IT rules. So to counter this disinformation or to counter this fake news, what has the government done? Well, it is basically the main clause in that again is safe harbor. Safe harbor simply means what? So I am a social media intermediary. Intermediary means, let us say I'm Instagram, I'm YouTube, I'm Facebook. Okay. I'm Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. So somebody is posting a content, somebody is viewing it. I am not owning the content. I am not even deciding what the other person will like or not like. I am just sitting here as an intermediary. You want to post something, you post. You want to see something, you see. It is left to you. It is left to him. I am innocent here. What the government has made the change to the safe harbor rule is that, so earlier the rule was, if government gives a request to remove a content, it should be removed within 24 to 36 hours, depending upon the nature of the content, like how bad it is or worst it is, either for individual or for the nation. 24 to 36 hours it was the time frame. The new rule says that you have to take it down within 2 to 3 hours. If you fail to do it, then I will not get, I am the social media, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, I will not get the safe harbor clause. That means I can no more say that, I don't know anything. They posted, they watched, I didn't do anything. I cannot take that safety there. 2 to 3 hours, government places a request, government tells remove the content, it should be removed immediately. 2 to 3 hours is maximum that will be allowed. Even after 2 to 3 hours it is not taken out, means penalties will come, fines will come. This is the most important change that the government of India has brought. Getting the picture here. Apart from this, what else can the government do? That is the other option with them. Internet shutdown is there. Section 69 of the IT Act is there. Section 79 of the IT Act is there, which again, the whole idea is to take things out. Then digital personal data protection is there, to ensure that the privacy, online privacy is protected. Online privacy of an individual is protected. Plus, government has ensured new regulations has been brought in, again, to deal with fake news, AI generated fake news. But government has said that if it is an AI generated video, it should be displayed in the video itself that it is AI content. Got the point? This is the way forward for government to deal with fake news and disinformation. End of the story. So some people may write, oh no, this is to balance, we have to balance it with the individual right. No individual right is about national security. Understand that very clearly. You, for fun, you might have made a video and you would have released it. But people, if they end up believing that video, it can create a crisis. Got the point here? Any questions? आपका नाम निखिल राम. Were you sir teaching? Teaching from studio, home studio, Bangalore. Again, this anybody and everybody should have prepared on this topic simply because this was on a very high frequency. It was there in current affairs. So this is like a sitter. In fact, internal security topics are generally like that. They'll be absolute sitters. You know what type of questions are going to come. Clear? Moving further. As usual, in our SRIJAN's daily test, we had asked a related question. Otherwise, also see social media related or cyber security related. These are sure shot topics. One or the other way, you have to sit and prepare on it. Got the point? Moving on. Ladakh is strategically located between China and Pakistan as a measure to win the hearts and minds of the locals. Discuss the border area development programs by the central government and civic actions by the army. Also discuss the demand for promulgation of the provisions of the 6th schedule of the constitution for Ladakh. Promulgation of constitution. Now this is again, like I told you, this is basically to see whether you will write the narrative what is given by the Hindu or not. See, UPSC is also very, very aware. Everybody reads the Hindu paper. And whenever people read the Hindu, they will always feel local people's aspirations needs to be supported and protected and blah, 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 blah. They will write that. I am not against it. But more than local people, more than you or I, what is important? The country is important. The first part of the answer, Ladakh is strategically located between China and Pakistan. So what will be your intro? Your intro is as simple as this. More or less. Okay, little out of practice now. Your first job is to draw this. That is your very first job. Because indirectly, see, this is not no sentence in a UPSC question is given simply. There is always a hidden intent behind it. Ladakh is strategically located between China and Pakistan. How? How is it located? Where is it located? Show me the location. So you show the location. Draw the map. Show where is Ladakh. How it is strategically located. Mark it out. Okay, one thing I will tell you. I should have told this in the beginning. When you try to draw a bigger map, as you see, it is looking very freakish. Correct? So, the easiest way to draw a map very accurately is reduce the scale and size of it. This much at least you can draw. That is done. Now it becomes easy. You can mark LOC, COK and then show. That you can do. Okay, Ladakh is this side, this is that side. So then Ladakh, which portion it is. Now it becomes clear. So that first part is done. Then comes the second part. Now the second part of the question, if you really ask me, this border area development program as well as civic actions by the army. Again, a repeated topic. Repeated, not only repeated, it is a little old. From a current affair perspective also, if you see, this is not something that keeps coming in the paper. This is like one dead letter. It is done already. That is, if you see the points also, what is the objective of it? Infrastructure, basic amenities. Road, health center, schools funded in Leh and Kargar border villages. Promoting tourism, handcraft and agro-based livelihood. Civic actions, Operation Sadbhavana, goodwill building, disaster relief medical aid, infrastructure support, employment and recruitment support. So Ladakh has a 97% tribal population. And they are also demanding what? They are also demanding that they be given 6th schedule status. This is the demand. So, what is the question again? Discuss the demand for promulgation. So, they are demanding that they should be put under 6th schedule because they are having a huge amount of tribal population. All of that they are demanding. If you have always read the Hindu newspaper, like any other UPSC aspirant or generally any, even for that matter, Indian Express also, because I am yet to see any paper particularly writing things in support of the central government. Why is it that center does not want to give the 6th schedule status to the tribals in Ladakh? I mean, almost everywhere else they are protected, either by 5th or by 6th they are protected. Why only in Ladakh this exception is there? The reason is again the geography. Literally it is sitting between what? Ladakh is sitting between China, Pakistan. And once you place it under 6th schedule, what does it mean? Center will have no control over land. Land will not come under the center anymore. Center will have to take the approval of Gram Sabha, even if they want to pick a stone from there. I am not kidding. That is how the rule is. You will have to take their approval if you want to carry out any infrastructure activity. If you actually look, that is the reason why I specifically underlined it also. Look at the border area development program. What is its main focus? Infrastructure, basic amenities. How are you going to build anything on that land when you don't have any control over it? We already saw in West Bengal what had happened. Mamata Banerjee's government never gave clearance to the central government for setting up border area fencing. She simply didn't give. Center had to go and fight the case even in the High Court of West Bengal. Got the point? Same thing will happen here. Center will have to keep waiting for approval. When Ladakh is such a place where there are claims and counterclaims made by the government as well as by the opposition that whatever the Chinese have already made incursions into Ladakh. Government is telling, no, this happened, this was done by Nehru. Nehru's blunder it was. Opposition is telling, no, this is not during Nehru. This happened very recently. We have no idea on it. We have no clarity on it. So this is the reason why we cannot actually put them under the 6th schedule. Because in Ladakh, if it was in any other part of India, it would have been easy. But Ladakh is a border area, very strategically important for us. We cannot simply let go of its land related activities, exactly, everything to the tribals there, and just sit back and see whether China or Pakistan, how are they going to come and attack. Got the point here? So tribal rights are important, 6th schedule is important, all of it is important, but it cannot come at the cost of, or it shouldn't be kept at a pedestal where you sacrifice national security. That is the crucial line you will have to put it in your answer. Got the point here? This is the way you are going to put it up. Moving on. Winning Ladakh's hearts and minds requires balancing BADP-driven development and army goodwill measures with genuine political dialogue on autonomy and representation, ensuring border security is reinforced through local trust rather than alienation. See, local trust is there or not? Whose job it is to ensure that our borders are secured? Whose job it is? Is it the tribal people's job? Is it the Gram Sabha's job? Is it the state's job? It is only the central government's job. It is central government's constitutional duty. So there, that time, it is not that, no, I will not move away from the border. This is my area, my land. Nobody can say that. When it comes to national security, like I've told this n number of times, your individual interest or your community interest or your tribal interest, everything will take a backseat. Clear? Bhavik Chauhan, happy Onam. Thank you very much. इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज सी एनी लैंग्वेज कोई भी भाषा हो इस्तेमाल करोगे तब उसमें बेहतर हो जाओगे. तो मेरा हिंदी काफ़ी कमज़ोर है और मैं कोशिश करता हूँ ज़्यादा बोलने के लिए, लेकिन कभी कभार क्या होता है, बिकॉज आई डोंट नो, आई एम अवेयर ऑफ सर्टेन वर्ड्स, मुझे वो शब्द कहाँ पर किस कॉन्टेक्स्ट पर यूज करना चाहिए वो मुझे मालूम नहीं है. ठीक है, तो दैट कम्स बाय बिकॉज आई एम नॉट अवेयर ऑफ इट, और आई keep making mistakes of whether I should use striling, pulling and all that. I keep aati thi, aati tha, this and all I don't know. But I am only thinking like what, okay, सामने वाले को पता चल गया ना मैं क्या कहना चाहता था. Enough. That's it. So first of all, take that thought out of your head. If I speak bad English, people will laugh at me. हंसने दो, क्या ही हो जाएगा. Clear? Separatist movements have been one of the major factors contributing to militancy and instability in Jammu and Kashmir. Bring out the actions taken by the government to bring JNK into national mainstream. Discuss the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A. Also bring out the positive impact of the abrogation of both articles in mainstreaming the state. This is like Sida they are asking everything about Kashmir. Separatist movement and militancy. Separatist movement only. So Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Force, Azad Kashmir Fauj. You can give couple of names like that, which were responsible for creating the separatist movement. Separatist movement ka, what is the main principle involved in it? Kashmir does not belong to India. Kashmir does not belong to Pakistan. Kashmir belongs to Kashmiri people. This is one of the favorite dialogue of every separatist or so-called left liberal media, left liberal narrative. But the Supreme Court has made it very, very clear that Jammu and Kashmir does not hold any special status unlike the other states. It is just like any other state in the country. It does not have any special category and all. Got the point? So first you will write what you mean by that separatist movement. What is the philosophy of the separatist movement? Philosophy is Kashmir should only belong to Kashmir. In this manner, if everybody says Punjab should belong only to Punjabis, Kerala should only belong to Keralites, Tamil Nadu should only belong to Tamilians, then that's it. Unity in diversity, all that will go for a toss. Clear? Bring out the actions taken by the government to bring JNK into the national mainstream. What and all actions were taken by the government so that JNK can be brought into the mainstream. Discuss the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A. Now, this is actually what I am not understanding. Okay, bhai, this sentence you ask, I understand. Specifically, why have you put this up? That means your answer, this, together you have to write these two. Jammu and Kashmir ko mainstream laane ke liye, what and all the government has done, you should start with infrastructure. What infrastructural activities have been undertaken? The tunnels built. Tunnels, roads, railways. This thing should definitely come. To promote tourism, what has the government done? This will become the part of your second part of the question. bring out the actions taken by the government. तीसरा क्या है? Discuss the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A. So under 370 and 35A, Jammu and Kashmir had a special status with which central government can implement any scheme all over India other than J&K, because any central scheme to be implemented in central policy, central scheme, whatever be it, if it had to be implemented in J&K, legislative assembly's approval was needed. Without their approval, nothing can be done. So by dissolving these two things, what happened? Jammu and Kashmir has been, the special status has been taken out, and J&K is today like any other part of the country. It is a union territory today with the legislative assembly. That's it. Supreme Court ruling again with regard to it. What has Supreme Court also said, that also you quote there. That part of the answer is over. Because now after that, what has happened? Militancy, etc. has gone down. That is the most important thing there. Whether you like 370 being taken out or whether you don't like 370 being taken out, the reality is what? Kashmir has become silent. People may say, "Wow, look at Pulwama, look at Balakot." You are able to count and tell, right? We know the names. We know the names of this attack. This attack took place. Uri took place. Balakot, this thing took place. Pulwama took place. We are able to name it. Chun Chunke, Gin Ginkar. Why? Because the number of attack is less. Whereas if I take it before 2016 and all, because 2016 you had demonetization. Before 2016, if I start counting the amount of attacks that used to take place in Jammu and Kashmir region, monthly basis you will have militant attacks happening, our officers dying on a monthly basis, weekly basis also sometimes. That is why before all this, before Article 370 and 35A abrogation, or before demonetization, the number of attacks that took place or the names of these attacks, none of us know. Even me being a faculty for internal security, even if you ask me what were the attacks that took place before, I know a lot of bomb blasts used to take place, lot of our soldiers used to get killed, but I don't even know a single name because it was a regular event. When I used to read the newspaper back in 2011-12 and all, terror attack took place. So then immediately it's a panic first. Then, Jammu and Kashmir, then okay. Because it became like that. You're used to it. Kashmir mein it is so natural. Even when I had visited Kashmir back in 2013-14 or 14, I think. When I had visited there, between the cup and the lip only, we missed a terror attack. Like we came from this place, I forgot, Baramulla, I think. We came from that place and we had come down. We come down and we were about to go into Punjab and all that. That is when we got the information that Baramulla has been under attack. So like that, these attacks used to happen on a frequent basis. One of the major takeaways of Article 370 and 35A is that terror attack has come down. Civilian deaths have come down. Deaths of soldiers have come down. I had covered this in, I think, last week's current affair. Hindu paper, they had published this entire Kashmir ka one, this thing, the impact or what has happened after Article 35A and 370 was taken out. Graphical data they had given with graph everything. So one of the key takeaway was terror attack has drastically reduced, and I had discussed it in class also. So bottom line here again is, at least 2 weeks before mains, newspaper reading is important. Make no doubt about it. Clear? Then what is the last one? Also bring out the positive impact of the abrogation of both the articles in mainstreaming the state. Like I told you, things have started improving there. Whether anybody likes it or not, whether the opposition likes it or not. That is the reality. Employment opportunities have increased, tourism, etc. have increased. Because we know when the Pahalgam attack took place, and after the Pahalgam attack, what had happened? Kashmiri people were really worried. Because if tourism goes out of Jammu and Kashmir, they will see poverty. See, a man is always poor. He will deal with it. From poverty, he saw what it is to eat comfortably 3 meals a day, staying in a nice home. He is having his own car, vehicle, everything. Now life is looking good. And suddenly a terror attack comes. He and his friends have started a new hotel or bought a new houseboat. They are paying the EMIs, etc. for it. Now this terror attack took place. Tourists declined by 70%. Now what happens? He's back to square one again. He have to sell his car now. He'll have to even sell his house or something, move into a rented apartment, and he slowly sees his savings are going down, and he's remembering what? Again, I am becoming poor again. Nobody will like it. Nobody will like it, because once you have seen the better side of life, nobody would like to go back to that old side. That's a human nature. That's a basic human nature. That is the reason why there was so much of anxiety from the side of the Kashmiri people that time when the terror attack took place. They were like, this is not us. We don't support this. We want tourists to come back. We want them to come back. Because they were seeing food. They were seeing money. Correct, Sandeep? Very, very correct. Clear? So that you will write there. Very direct question. And one more thing to remember. See, 370 and 35A, this can keep coming as a question again and again. Even though it has been like a couple of years now since this has occurred. Correct. So this will keep happening now. Every few years, this will come back. J and K will keep coming back. All right. Moving further. Okay, this graph is not clear. Discuss counterfeit currency and money laundering as major sources of terror funding in India. Obviously, we all saw Durandar movie, how it was shown in it, etc., etc. Whether you call it a propaganda movie or whether you don't call it a propaganda movie, it is left to you. Now, how it became a propaganda movie, I don't know. Because as far as if you really see, if you see the characters and the timeline when, let us say, Hamza Ali entered Pakistan, or for that matter, our what was that guy name? Jamal Sahib, Jamal or Kamal or whatever. He entered Pakistan. It will actually look as if during the Congress era, they both have entered Pakistan. One during the era of Indira Gandhi, and the other during the era of maybe Manmohan Singh or whatever. Correct. So it should actually portray Congress in the right light. But we don't know. People are like calling it propaganda movie, whatever. That is another story altogether. So money laundering and counterfeit currency, is it a scourge? Absolutely, because this was said by the Supreme Court itself. Money laundering and is as dangerous as what? This thing. Terrorism itself. Counterfeit currency, fake currency. Jamil Jamali, correct. Counterfeit currency is fake currency. A fake currency, is it there in India even now after demonetization? It is still there. It is still there. And as long as fake currency is there, it is not just terror funding that will happen. It will lead to any type of what? Criminal nexus. Organized crime. It will contribute to. It will pass on money from one hand to the other, from one criminal network to the other, where human trafficking, gun running, drug trafficking, and then you have terrorism. All these are linked with each other. Got the picture here? Even under terrorism, again, you can connect it and say Naxalism. That is one added point. Naxalism is also in a way a form of terrorism only. There is make no doubt about it. Let us not romanticize Naxalism. Killing our Jawans, killing our CRPF soldiers is not a joke. It is not, there is nothing romantic about it. Got the point? So that flowchart you can make. Because generally when people hear terrorism, now the only thing that will come into their mind is India-Pakistan terrorism. Terrorism of any form, where the ideology is so, between India Pakistan, we can say, okay, it is Islamic terrorism or Islamist terrorism, extreme form. Correct. The other ideological terrorism is what? Naxalism. So that you will add. Then state the actions being taken at the international level to check these menaces. International level, what are we doing? One is SWIFT. SWIFT is there. SWIFT is basically what all the international transactions that are happening, that is tracked. All the international transaction. That is the way it is being tracked. Governments are also being very, very wary about digital currencies like Bitcoin. Dark web. All these are under the watch of government. Governments across the world. Then comes what? Highlight the role of Financial Action Task Force and methods of compliance by its member states in preventing terror funding. Now, if you ask me this point here, this is again like historical question. FATF. FATF's grey list, FATF's blacklist. So grey list is like a warning. Pakistan keeps coming in and out of the grey list. Blacklist means those countries, with those countries you cannot indulge in any sort of financial transaction. Iran, for example. North Korea, for example. These two are in the blacklist. Got the point here? That you will mention. Gauri, Deepa, you're only in 9th standard. If I would have got married at the right time, 25 and all, like how my friends have got married, if I also would have got married, I will be having a daughter or a son of your age by now. So, considering me somebody to be old enough to be your father, I am telling you, 9th, focus on your 9th now, focus on your 10th, 11th, 12th. Focus on these things first. Once you reach college, we can think about UPSC. Till then, focus on your school. Alright, you are at least another 7 years away from getting into UPSC and all. By then, whether UPSC itself will be there, God Almighty knows. Alright. So, Financial Action Task Force, grey list, blacklist, methods of compliance by its members. That is the method. So, you are supposed to, basically under Financial Action Task Force, what it is, you are supposed to show that you are not using any funds which will promote terrorism. You are supposed to show everything that is transparent. That is the point there. Clear? So, again, a very static topic, to be very, very honest, because these are not something like, "Arey, aise kaise pooch liya." These are all like, usually it is there. So in our SRIJAN's daily test also we had used money laundering, which is again another favorite topic. Money laundering, that is, so I told you, one is cyber crimes, social media, terrorism, within that again Naxal. Then you have 1, 2, 3. Yeah, then you have money laundering. These are sure short topics. Make no doubt about it. Clear, people? Kadinya. 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, right. 4 questions. 4 questions. Done. Again, those of you, some of them were asking, I think Lakshmi was asking how to prepare for 2027. So Lakshmi, this is your option. Prelims plus mains preparation batch for 2027 UPSC aspirants. 10,000. Which is basically like focusing on prelims plus mains, answer writing and all of that. You may consider taking this up. The other thing to do is, now this is already the month of August is almost done. September, October, November, December. September, October, November, December, as much as possible. GS1, 2, 3, 4 plus your optional. Paper 1, paper 2. One question each from the PYQ 2013. So when you write it PYQ wise, there will be some topics which are repeated. Alright. Some top like Harappa Mohenjo-daro civilization. Repeated it is. So if it is repeated some three times you need not write the answer. You just need to write the topic name, write the 3 questions, write the full answer. You write in that same answer if another dimension is there to it as per the demand of the question. Getting my point here? If another dimension has been asked within that for the topic in the 4th or the 5th question, there is another dimension. Add it up. So this way what happens is if you are covering at least 6 topics like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Where maximum. So minimum page should be 2 pages for that topic. Maximum you can go, let us say, up to 5 pages. And this answer, whenever you write, it should be based on the latest current affair data and examples. Like that, you start writing. Topic wise, you start writing every day. So what happens? So let us say per topic, you're writing one answer. Let us say 5 pages. 5 pages may take half an hour. So half an hour, 1. Half an hour, 2. Half an hour, 3. In 3 hours, you will end up studying 6 topics. And it is your own handwritten note. By the time you hit December, right, you would have covered a lion's share. And as you see, you are about to close it. You are about to close the gap now. Only few topics are remaining. Or as you see that things are getting completed, then you start writing essays. Because by now you will have enough content with you. Punya, you are doing your first year MBBS. My dream is UPSC. Once UPSC prep, give me some guidance. Punya, if you can go for it, take a Praram batch. 3-year batch it is. The Praram batch, when you take, it will start right from the NCRT all the way to your optional. Everything gets covered there. And it is a very gradual thing. You can take it either now or you can take it after your 2nd year also. Alright. No, you want to do self-preparation means again the same rule. You start with NCRTs. You start with NCRTs, then you go for the standard books, then you go for your optional. But you will have to set the timetable, you will have to be very consistent. The entire responsibility of preparing will be only on you. When you take a batch, the advantage is just sit there because content, everything will be delivered by the faculty, material will come to you. Got the point? So that you can do. Apart from that, our toppers again, Medha Anand, Harshita Goyal, Rajkrishna Jha, Pakshal Secretary, Noor Alam, Ayushi Sijeria. Anything more you want to know about our programs, etc., please scan this QR code. Alright. Alright, people. Jai Hind. Any other queries before I call it a day? Alright then, let's call it a day.